Chapter 344. Through the psychic wave network, Bamboo Pole looked straight at him and grinned. I won't say much about other things, but since you've attended both my class and Secretary He's class, don't you have any thoughts? Probably. Luo Nan's heart wasn't as hesitant as his mouth was. After all, He Yuan and Bamboo Pole were both teaching cultural classes, and their styles were completely different. In private, he couldn't help but make some comparisons. Bamboo Pole encouraged, Tell me. There was no need to say much about Bamboo Pole's teaching methods. As for He Yuan, Luonan thought for a bit and said, Sister Yuan teaches. All sorts of information is readily available at her fingertips. She covers a wide range of details, and the context is clear. She is very captivating. What else? His arguments are precise, and his words are eloquent. Furthermore, they are often sharp and penetrating to the bone. Most of the time, he points directly at the deeper business behind important events. The relationship between the secular world and the inner world, the traditional political structure and the new powers of ability users, is clearly understood. Bamboo Pole's eyebrows twitched. What you've just said, I think I've done pretty well. Of course, I can forget about the righteous promise part. But don't just praise me. Do you think I don't have any flaws? Or is it something different from me? He saw that Luo Nan was a bit hesitant, so he urged Luo Nan with all his might. Relax. I won't blabber. Plus, even if I say it, people will be open-minded. They won't care. I don't know what's missing. In the end, Luo Nan was an honest child. He didn't want to gossip behind Luo Nan's back. He pondered for a while before saying, I'm different from you. The knowledge points in class are more concentrated, and the pace is much faster than yours. Bamboo Pole laughed heartily and clapped his hands. That's right. Ha! Luonan didn't understand what was so funny about this. Bamboo Pole reminded him further. Isn't the timetable he arranged for you for the same reason? From morning till night. You followed him closely? It's all right. It's not particularly tight. Besides, if I don't do this, how can I quickly grasp knowledge? Of course you think it's normal, because you and she are the same kind of person. They're all like a taut bow. When they shoot out an arrow, it's sharp and indestructible. But what about during normal times? Luo Nan was slightly stunned. This was the first time he had heard someone place him on the same level as He Yuan. Bamboo Pole continued, No one in the branch can keep up with Secretary He's fast pace. It's as if there's a beast chasing after her. Ever since she had joined, she had assisted in the affairs of the branch and drawn up various systems. Of course it was good, but it was a loose association, and they weren't in a state of war. Who could persevere every day? Out of 100 people, 10 are used to it, 10 are persevering, 50 are slackers, and 30 are dragging us down. Before we can face the external enemies, we will collapse internally. Luo Nan seriously suspected that Bamboo Pole had seized the opportunity to ridicule him. As a hacker, this guy was naturally skeptical of all constraints. He was a standard anarchist, and he never hid this when he taught. But Luo Nan really admired one thing about Bamboo Pole. Ridicule was ridicule, but Bamboo Pole and He Yuan were the best partners in these operations. Their tacit understanding was the highest. We are talking about an example. Bamboo Pole adjusted his posture on the ergonomic chair and said helplessly, In a sense, people like Secretary He are very self-centered. Don't doubt me, I'm talking about you. Unconsciously or unconsciously, you always think that the earth will rotate according to your rhythm. Luo Nan, who was self-centered, could only listen. Let's not talk about it. Secretary He is actually a great person. She has a bit of a messiah mentality. She always feels that her way of doing things is good for everyone. She has a sense of responsibility for all living beings under the heavens. Perhaps with her family background, she really does know more secrets, dangers, and unspeakable difficulties than we do. But for a hopeless fellow like me, she's a bit boring. I can't raise any interest in pursuing her. Bamboo Pole's eyes slanted as he spoke to this point. What about you? The silence lasted for a moment. Luo Nan was baffled. Why aren't you talking? Bamboo Pole spread his hands. I'm asking you. You're much more autistic than Secretary He, and her goals are clearer than yours. Her techniques are more superb, and her mind is clearer. She knows her own shortcomings, and she is constantly improving. But you're different. You're only 16 years old, right? You're underage, immature, and your temperament isn't set. You have a head full of bizarre thoughts. Don't say it out loud. Isn't it tiring to use your brain to guess? Luo Nan's lips twitched. This wasn't the first time he had heard such an evaluation, but it was rare for Bamboo Pole to use an example as a foil. Luo Nan felt a bit sorry for He Yueyin. Just as he was about to speak, Bamboo Pole raised his hand. There's no need to say things like justifying formatting theory and protecting my mother's work. Then what else was there to say? Luo Nan choked in an instant. Bamboo Pole stared at him for a long time before sighing. You don't have any other goals? Luo Nan imitated him and spread his hands. Just these aren't enough? What else do you want? Bamboo Pole sighed once more. Isn't this enough? Huh. What's there to dissect? You've said a long string, but the conclusion is already very clear. You and Secretary He are the same kind of people. You both live your days with your bowstrings stretched taut. Your goals are the source of your pressure. This is because those things are very hard to deal with. They are very hard to achieve. Luo Nan didn't like hearing these words. It's very hard to achieve? As long as it involves confrontation, it's very hard. Bamboo Pole took care of Luo Nan's mood. He erased a key phrase and highlighted another. Who are the people standing against you? If the disparity is too great, the harder you work, the greater the pressure. Unless you possess the ability to flatten everything, or at the very least, you have the ability to make most people compromise. Just like Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luo Nan was silent. Even Her Majesty Empress Wu rarely directly confronts a certain colossus. For her, growing and strengthening is her #1 priority. She takes the initiative. She prioritizes things. She has to do things step by step. It doesn't matter if she takes a few detours. Secretary He's route is very clear. It's to integrate the society's stragglers and stragglers. Perhaps her methods are worth discussing, but she has a strong backbone. She has many resources, and her selfishness is even less. What about you? You charge your way towards your goal. You flatten all the traps and mechanisms. Fortunately, you're a stubborn piece of iron. You'll treat ordinary checkpoints as hammering blows. If it were someone else, they would have long since been smashed into meat paste. But in the future, will Quantum Corporation, the Order of Justice, and those people from headquarters continue to hammer you? Or will they set up a blast furnace and melt you in one breath? Luo Nan's eyelids twitched. This was the situation he was worried about. However, Bamboo Pole's words seemed to have deviated once more. He was no longer simply analyzing Luo Nan. Luo Nan was still uncertain, so he followed along with Bamboo Pole's tone and asked, "Then Brother Bamboo Pole, what do you think I should do next?" Only when the words left his mouth did Luo Nan remember that he had asked Bamboo Pole for guidance not too long ago. Back then, Bamboo Pole had refused, and Her Majesty Empress Wu and He Yueyin were 2 examples. Sure enough, Bamboo Pole extended a hand and pointed at him. "You're asking me this again. What's the point of asking me? I dare to bet that with your temper, no matter what extravagant flowery words other people say, you'll still follow your temper when things come to a head. Flatten. Whether it's a hammer or a blast furnace in front of you, there's no difference." Luo Nan really didn't have much hope in his control. There was just one point where he admitted that Bamboo Pole was wrong. "I don't want to play with flatten. Who wouldn't be happy if they could reach their goal more easily? But when things come to a head, I have no choice. Then how do you get yourself to the point where things come to a head time and time again?" Luo Nan really did consider this question seriously for a moment. Since when did he always fall into a situation where there was no way out? He didn't obtain an answer, but there was one thing that was very clear. If these days continued, the times where things came to a head would grow more and more frequent. The opportunities for him to make choices would grow smaller and smaller until there were none. Bamboo Pole looked at Luo Nan's expression, and could roughly understand Luo Nan's current bewilderment. "So, I'll still say the same thing. If I were you, I would certainly run as far as I can. It's not because of fear or cowardice. It's because you have enough space to act as a buffer. Only then can you grow and strengthen. Only then can you have the leeway to choose." "That's impossible." Luo Nan didn't even need to think before he refused. Bamboo Pole had expected this long ago. His eyes didn't even blink as he immediately said, "Then you need a shield and a rein." The shield will give you a chance to catch your breath on the battlefield. The rain will strangle your neck when you're hot-headed. Luo Nan blinked his eyes. Brother Bamboo Pole, you can speak a bit more bluntly. Bamboo Pole rolled his eyes. I've already spoken bluntly enough. Fine. What I mean is that you need to find a backer. Backer? Rely on who? Bamboo Pole looked at him like he was looking at an idiot. Who in Xia City can you rely on right now? President Ouyang. Get lost, you idiot. Luo Nan grunted. He felt quite wronged. There were only 2 extraordinaries who could protect him in Xia City. What was wrong with him thinking of Ouyang Chen in the first instance? Luo Nan's thoughts spun again. Only then did he realize that the example that Bamboo Pole spared no effort in talking was absolutely not just for show. You want me to rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu? Luo Nan knew that he had finally guessed correctly when he saw Bamboo Pole's expression. However, he didn't quite understand Bamboo Pole's train of thought. What's the difference between President Ouyang and Her Majesty Empress Wu? Also, aren't I under their protection right now? The Xia City branch taking care of you is official business. Since it's official business, it will be restricted by procedures. Accordingly, there will certainly be flaws. The matter with headquarters is the best proof. The same reasoning can be used on President Ouyang. Who let him be the president? Bamboo Pole used his finger to point at Luo Nan from afar. More importantly, in a loose organization like the society, there's no one who can control you. You can do stupid things, and there's no way to restrain you. He Yuein is quite suitable, but she's standing in the wrong position from the start. She's the boss's secretary and the like. It's so awkward. Luo Nan was a bit embarrassed. Brother Bamboo Pole, you're an anarchist. Everything you say is controlled. Is that really good? At the very least, I never cause trouble. Bamboo Pole stabbed a knife into Luo Nan's chest and twisted it. I rarely do stupid things. Even so, I sometimes find a place to rest and earn a bit of extra money. Ha! Idiot! I'm a lobbyist right now, Boss Luo. Chapter 345. Luo Nan bid farewell to Xue Lei at the school gates and took a car back home. The car he rode in was sent by the Xia City branch. The driver was a professional security guard with extraordinary strength. The two were not familiar with each other, so they did not talk much on the way. Luo Nan was the only one staring blankly most of the time. It was just as Bamboo Pole said. Today, Luo Nan had indeed become a lobbyist in addition to teaching. And the person who hired him was the legendary Her Majesty Empress Wu. Bamboo Pole was eloquent, and his persuasive skills were sufficient. Luo Nan was indeed a bit moved at the time. But the awkward thing was that he had pretty much forgotten all of these words by the time he got in the car. It was not that he was not attentive, but that he was overly nervous. Luo Nan had always been the focal point of the society during his time there. But this was the first time he had accepted a genuine recruitment like today. He lacked the relevant social experience. His mind was a complete mess of distracting thoughts when he encountered this matter. He did not know how to respond. So much so that Luo Nan remembered the most clearly not the benefits Her Majesty Empress Wu would give him. Instead, it was Bamboo Pole's words of consolation. Boss Luo, you are not of age yet, but you are already a complete member of society. Things like this are unavoidable. You can seek the opinions of others. Ask more. Refer more. Don't rush to make a judgment. Her Majesty Empress Wu went through me and not through Zhang Yingying because that girl is too impatient. She wants to avoid playing the emotional card and affecting your judgment. These words were filled with sincerity, but the reason why Luo Nan remembered them was because Bamboo Pole's words, member of society, poked at his sore spot. Luo Nan opened the car window and rested his elbow on the window frame, feeling the incoming night wind. A moment later, he used his other hand to draw a diagram. It was a tetrahedron, and it was divided into 5 layers. According to formatting theory, this was the societal formatting diagram. From bottom to top, it was clearly divided into 5 layers: student, employee, technician, priest, and politician. This was the classification of the resources he controlled. It was barely possible to correspond to the outside society. Luo Nan still remembered his first conversation with Zhang Yingying on the ship Lanshan. He had solemnly vowed that he needed pressure and opportunity to enter a completely new circle to satisfy the needs of his rapid rise in social status. His voice was still in his ears. He had truly taken this step, but how could he have imagined that he would be at a loss today? He didn't think that his initial choice was wrong, but was this kind of passive situation inevitable? If one viewed life as a game, then the path he had chosen after his class advancement would definitely be a terrible one. Furthermore, there would be no save point, and he wouldn't be able to start all over again, nor would he be able to stop. Luo Nan had to chew on the bitter fruit of life, and he had reached a juncture. He had to make a decision. He could not stop moving forward. Luo Nan couldn't quite understand Her Majesty Empress Wu's thoughts. He was unable to guess the calculations within. He could only follow Bamboo Pole's advice and seek the opinions of others. The first person he thought of was He Yueyin, but when he applied for the call, she should be dealing with some business and couldn't be distracted. She only left a message saying that she would contact him later. Luo Nan could only skip it for now. His thoughts swept through the list of friends in the Hexa, pondering over who he should consult. Zhang Yingying had to jump over first. Cragburst seemed to be making a move tonight as well. As for Octopus, Luo Nan had no confidence in his ability to express himself with words, so he simply turned them into words. He left a few messages for his friends, asking for advice. Not long after it was sent, the driver suddenly said, "Boss Luo, we're home." Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. Only then did he realize that he had taken a bit too long to organize his words. The car had already driven to the entrance of the residential area. It was just past dinner time. There were quite a few residents strolling and exercising on the streets. "Thank you, Brother Qi." Luo Nan politely expressed his thanks and got off the car to head home. He only realized halfway there. When did he become accustomed to being addressed as Boss Luo? Luo Nan walked into the house. There was no one in the living room. Luo Nan called out, and his uncle Amo Haiheng responded from the kitchen, "Oh Luo Nan, wait a moment. The food needs to be reheated." "Oh okay." It was already 8 o'clock in the evening. Dinner time had long passed. However, as long as his uncle was home, he would certainly reserve a portion for Luo Nan, the king of stomachs. Luo Nan first went to wash his face and used cold water to stimulate himself. When he returned to the living room, Mrs. Luo Shuqing was already sitting on the sofa in her home clothes. "Auntie." Luo Nan rushed to greet her. He was most afraid of this person in the family. Luo Shuqing had her head lowered as she fiddled with her wristband. Luo Nan's heart thumped when he saw this scene. He immediately bypassed the minefield and headed to the dining room. But he was still too late. A cold and clear voice came from behind him. "Did Mo ya call yet?" No. I haven't been in contact for the past 2 days. Maybe Mo Peng." "Where is he?" Luo Nan turned around. He didn't see the best shield, but this didn't prevent him from diverting the disaster. He went crazy outside. I hope he'll be back before 9. Mrs. Luo Shuqing's attention shifted a bit, but she soon locked onto her target. "Has Moya confirmed the specific time she'll be returning to Xia City?" The words "return to Xia City" were remarkable. As the saying goes, no one knows a daughter better than a mother. Madame Luo Shuqing had already determined that even if her unfilial daughter returned from the music festival, she wouldn't return home for a while. After all, she would be gone for a month. Things had gotten out of hand. Luo Nan continued to play dumb. "I haven't been in contact for the past 2 days. At most, I'll look at her circle of friends." "Won't she be back after the music festival ends?" Luo Shuqing raised her head to look at her nephew. In the end, she couldn't resist her doting heart. She sighed and didn't pursue the matter any further. "Let's go eat. If there's nothing going on at school, we'll adjust the time for supplementary lessons. It's not good to eat too late." Luo Nan responded vaguely and quickly sat at the dining table. His uncle just happened to deliver the sliced beef with a small pancake. The pancake was wrapped with beef and scallions. The texture was firm and crisp. It was very chewy and went well with the rice. Luo Nan was half serious and half fake in order to avoid trouble. He buried his head in the food and didn't give his mouth any time to rest. His uncle sat on the other side of the dining table and sighed. "It's fortunate that you're practicing martial arts. Otherwise, your body would be out of shape if you continued like this every day." This was a good topic. Luo Nan's mouth wasn't idle. He could only nod over and over. Aside from Mo Peng, no one in the family has ever been fat. If you have the ability, then feed that unfilial daughter into a pig. I want to see how she'll go wild in the outside world. Luo Shuqing was annoyed by being alone in the living room, so she came to the dining table. His uncle immediately shut his mouth and smiled, avoiding the frontal attack. Luo Shuqing knew that her husband had an impenetrable ability. Her gaze turned to a certain person who was the easiest to bully. Luo Nan hated that he couldn't stuff the entire beef pancake into his mouth. But he had eaten too quickly just now. The previous roll had already entered his stomach. Right now there was a gap, and he couldn't avoid it. His brain heated up, and by some strange coincidence, he self-destructed. Today, a friend's boss wants me to go work at her company. Chapter 346. Luo Nan regretted it the moment he spoke. Emoya must have secretly placed a curse on him. That's why he would ignore the consequences and step forward to block the bullet. No matter how much he regretted it, he could no longer swallow the words he had spoken. The consequences of his actions were immediately apparent. His uncle and aunt's gazes were directed at him at the same time. They were puzzled at first, but then they became vigilant. Your friend? Boss. What do I want you to do? What kind of company is that? There was a sequence of questions, but the meaning behind them was the same. Luo Nan knew that he had poked a hornet's nest. He was unable to explain why his family's introverted otaku would suddenly attract the interest of a social company. He could only bite the bullet and avoid the question. I haven't agreed yet. I'm afraid he's just saying it. Luo Shuqing stared into her nephew's eyes. The question now is, why is this company interested in you? Why can't she be interested in me? Luo Nan forced himself to be thick-skinned. He was prepared to pester her endlessly at any time. Luo Shuqing wanted to say more, but Emo Haiheng gestured for his wife to stop. He maintained his smile and said calmly, Let me ask, why didn't you agree? Is the pay not suitable or the time does not permit? Yes. Emo Haiheng didn't wait for Luo Nan to finish speaking. Your cautious attitude is correct. Regardless of age, as long as there was a labor relationship, working hours and pay were very important. How much did they pay you? Luo Nan was stupefied when it came to the specifics. He stared blankly for a moment before replying, We haven't reached that step yet. If there's a need to talk later, you might as well ask your aunt to be your advisor. She's a senior HR officer in a big company, and she specializes in this. She's experienced in scamming people and getting scammed. Luo Nan buried his head in eating. He responded vaguely, Oh, okay. Luo Shuqing glared at her husband, but as a married couple for decades, she knew some tricks very well, so she immediately changed her words. Working and being independent is a good thing. What's the name of that company again? I can help you find out the bottom line first. Other things aside, you should be able to grasp the average salary. If you negotiate with them, you will be able to seize the initiative. She had been in the HR business for many years. In terms of human resources management, she had a wide network of contacts and was skilled in the business. He had already opened up a professional search software as he spoke. He could find all the official businesses of Xia City on it. The couple looked amiable on the outside, but in reality, they were pressing him. Luo Nan's brain was no longer working in circles. He wasn't good at lying to begin with, so he began to leak out. I think she's called Blue something? Hidden Indigo Company? It should be an office. Luo Nan half buried his face into his rice bowl. Otherwise, the cold sweat on his forehead would be seen clearly. Now he knew why he was in such a difficult situation in just a month, and why he had made so many enemies. This impulse was too deadly. Luo Shuqing quickly found out the results. Hidden Indigo Firm. Oh, there's registration information and tax payment records. It's mainly engaged in legal consulting business. It seems to be fairly formal. What's the name of the boss who recruited you? Wu. Ahem. I only know her surname is Wu. Wu Jiong? Luo Shuqing read out the name of the legal representative of the firm. For a moment, the restaurant was filled with awkwardness. Long live Her Majesty Empress Wu. Luo Nan let out a long breath. Now he had a handle. Wait, samurai? Why not just call her Wu Zetian? Emo Haiheng tapped his fingers on the table and frowned. Of course, there were many unreliable parents in this world. There were all sorts of strange names for their children, but there were extremely few who would specifically use the name of a unique and unmatched character in history. More importantly, This violated the current laws and regulations. Not to mention anything else, it was impossible for the social authority department he worked in to pass such an application for information. But the current situation was that this Mrs. Wu Zhao had used this name in an imposing manner. Moreover, she had used this name to register an official office. Based on his years of experience working in the SCA, he could tell that Wu Zhao, this office, and the corresponding registration information were all fake from start to finish. It could even be said that she was making a mockery of public authority. Or, she was a very powerful person who could openly violate certain social rules. Of course, she must be very willful. Mo Haihang was unable to immediately verify these judgments, nor did he say them out loud. His mind spun like lightning, but his face remained smiling as he asked, "She took the initiative to express interest in you. This is very good. This means that you have a skill that is useful to her business." "What is it specifically?" "Yeah, what was it?" Luo Nan was a bit absent-minded. He held a cautious attitude toward Her Majesty Empress Wu's basis for recruiting him. It was hard not to be suspicious when he carried a treasure on him. He didn't have an answer right now, but he couldn't stop talking. He could only rack his brain and comb through his abilities on the surface. Fortunately, a flash of inspiration struck him before he suffocated to death. He combined today's experience and found a reason. "They appreciate my sketching ability." Sketching. Luo Nan's answer was more or less outside of the expectations of the two parents. They looked at each other once more. They knew that Luo Nan had a sketching ability. He could sketch a vivid and lifelike drawing in an extremely short amount of time. But what was the use of this toy? Luo Shuqing immediately asked, "What does the hidden indigo firm need this kind of employee for?" "It seems to be a detective or something. Nowadays, many people carry anti-surveillance equipment. Some things are hard to operate, and it will arouse the other party's vigilance. They want to recruit someone like me to give it a try." Private detective. Luo Shuqing's brows locked tight. This sort of job. Yeah. I also feel that this sort of job is a bit strange. It's just that I can't refuse them face to face because of my friend. I'll wait for the other side's enthusiasm to subside in 2 days. Then I'll refuse. Luo Nan finished speaking in a single breath and let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally made the connection, but he would certainly collapse if he continued speaking. He immediately swept the food off the table like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. Then he stood up. "That's about it. Uncle and Auntie, don't worry. I won't run off into society. Oh, the materials for today's supplementary lessons should be sent over. There's also homework. I'm going upstairs." He didn't even tidy up the dishes after he finished speaking. He turned around and left. Luo Shuqing still wanted to call out to him, but Mo Haiheng gestured for her to calm down. The two made eye contact, and Luo Shuqing discovered that her husband's attitude was extremely serious. Luo Nan went up to the second floor in a few steps and fled to his room. He locked the door and finally relaxed. He lay on the bed, swayed a few times, and then began to roll around while holding his head. "Luo Nan, you pig. Dumbass. Idiot." He muttered as he defiled himself to relieve the hatred in his heart. But soon, he began to feel weak in his heart. His two elders should be pondering over his matter right now. His words were full of flaws. He shouldn't think of getting through this easily. For now, he needed to do some detective work. Oh no, it should be the work of a spy. Yes, with his mental sensing ability, there were no secrets to the conversation between uncle and auntie. When the time came, he would design a plan to deal with suspicions. It shouldn't be hard to brush them off, right? Chapter 347. "Mr. Luo, are you looking for me?" He Yuan asked through the hexa ear. Her voice was low and hoarse. She was probably in a rather tired state. Luo Nan grunted, unable to respond immediately. He remembered Bamboo Pole's example, and knew that He Yuan was also under a lot of pressure. It was inevitable that he would feel a little embarrassed constantly troubling her. "Mr. Luo?" He Yuan's tone was still questioning, but her attitude was still very calm. "It's like this. Just now, Brother Bamboo Pole mentioned." Luo Nan did his best to make a long story short. He talked about how Bamboo Pole earned extra money and how he helped Her Majesty Empress Wu recruit him. In the end, he naturally asked for He Yuan's opinion. He Yuan didn't respond immediately. She was silent for approximately half a minute. When she opened her mouth again, she didn't rush to answer Luo Nan's question. Instead, she inquired about the details of the time, including the examples that Luo Nan was too embarrassed to elaborate on. She asked about them one by one. Luo Nan was basically forced by He Yueyin to recollect the situation at the time once more. He felt even more awkward. He felt like he was a villain who was trying to stir up trouble. He Yueyin didn't care about this. After thinking for a moment, she opened her mouth and said, "Mr. Luo, are you considering whether or not to join? Or are you considering Her Majesty Empress Wu's thoughts?" These words hit the nail on the head. Luo Nan had gone through this period of contemplation, and He Yueyin had forced him to recall. Luo Nan was more or less clear about his own thoughts. Why did he join the hidden indigo firm? In the past, Zhang Yingying had also introduced the firm to him. The main business of this firm was to provide services to the rich and powerful of Xia City. They looked for rich men to catch sheep, managed interpersonal relationships, made investments, and so on. This wasn't the life Luo Nan wanted, except for a generous income. Luo Nan didn't have anything to hide. He immediately responded, "I don't understand what Her Majesty Empress Wu is thinking." "Well, hold on. She doesn't seem to be particularly eager to recruit me." A flash of inspiration flashed through Luo Nan's mind as he spoke, and the meaning of the latter half of the sentence changed. He Yueyin declined to comment. "What's the reason?" "You know, a few days ago, the firm did a business outsourcing. This model suits me very well. At least, it's more suitable than working in the firm. If it wasn't for this matter, and I'm in urgent need of money now, I might really join. But since there's a better way, it'll definitely affect the so-called recruitment." "Isn't that so?" Luo Nan was a bit lacking in confidence when he spoke to this point. He urgently needed to seek advice. He Yueyin replied, "There's no problem with the overall train of thought." "Really? There's only one thing that needs to be corrected." According to Her Majesty Empress Wu's temperament, the business opportunities you've obtained should be compensation. Luo Nan expressed his lack of understanding. He Yueyin explained to him, "According to what you've said, Bamboo Pole's evaluation of Her Majesty Empress Wu is quite appropriate. Her Majesty Empress Wu has always abided by the law and disregarded morality. She seems to not bother with trifles normally, but she is actually very strict, both to others and to herself." It wasn't just this time. In the past, Bamboo Pole had also mentioned this point in class, and had even given a few examples. But when Luo Nan thought of Zhang Yingying, he went a bit off track. He really couldn't imagine how that sister, with her flying and bouncing temperament, was able to survive under the pressure of her strict boss. It would be difficult to establish a relevant impression. But now that He Yueyin had said the same thing, he had no choice but to believe it. "Harsh it is. I don't want to go anymore. What does this have to do with compensation?" "Because of the headquarters." He Yueyin's words hit the nail on the head. "Headquarters took action against you after Her Majesty Empress Wu agreed to protect you from President Ouyang. The situation was critical at the time. Admittedly, Black Beetle was the reason behind it, but an oversight is an oversight. Her Majesty Empress Wu is harsh to herself and others. Mending the pen after the sheep is lost must be done. Otherwise, even if Yingying is different from ordinary people, it would be very difficult to obtain Her Majesty Empress Wu's agreement to give you a deal worth several million." Luo Nan suddenly realized. No wonder. Otherwise, it could be said that there was no such thing as meat pies falling from the sky in this world. Now the feeling of unease brought about by the generous business rewards vanished like smoke in thin air. So this was exchanged with his life. Of course, Her Majesty Empress Wu's principle of self-discipline and Zhang Yingying's care and concern were still engraved in his heart. And now, after He Yueyin explained the compensation, she changed the topic and entered the main topic. "As for this recruitment, it's just as you said. Her Majesty Empress Wu probably doesn't expect you to join the hidden indigo firm. She had Bamboo Pole deliver the message. She probably expressed her attitude more than anything else." "What attitude?" "Her Majesty Empress Wu is well known for pushing down the wall. She has devoted herself to forging a brand new social order these past few years, allowing ability users to seamlessly enter the secular society. Naturally, it is easier for young people to exert influence in promoting and putting her theories into practice. In fact, she is famous for her love of training young people with potential. Brother Bamboo Pole talked about this before. Well, are you saying that Her Majesty Empress Wu is displaying her appreciation for me? He Yueyin let out a rare chuckle. The word display is well used. Luo Nan's mind went in circles. So you're saying that the so-called display isn't for me, but for other people? If this wasn't the case, then why would Her Majesty Empress Wu send the message through Bamboo Pole? And why would Bamboo Pole ask you to consult others? This is to release public opinion, to expand its influence, and to declare its attitude to people with intentions. In this way, people like headquarters won't have to consider the factor of Her Majesty Empress Wu's deep involvement if they want to make a move against you. Bamboo Pole is quite right. Public and private matters are different in the end. Nothing is more ideal than balancing public and private matters. Luo Nan finally understood the twists and turns within. He let out a long sigh of relief, but he also had a bit of complex emotions. So you're saying that the so-called recruitment is just an empty title? I say. He Yuan's voice was gentle as she spoke softly. Mr. Luo shouldn't be unduly humble. Her Majesty Empress Wu is harsh on herself and others. Her standards are extremely high. If Mr. Luo isn't up to par, then she wouldn't even give you a glance. She wouldn't even put on this sort of attitude. To put it bluntly, this is an expression of goodwill. It's an investment for the future. That's enough, Sister Yuan. I'm not someone with a heart of glass. I know my own position. I have Her Majesty Empress Wu's explicit words to protect me. What's there to be dissatisfied about? Luo Nan responded with a brisk tone. After dispelling his doubts, he was really embarrassed to take up more of He Yuan's time. He immediately said, Sister Yuan, I'm relieved after you explain things. You still have things to do over there, right? Hurry up and do what you need to do. I'm doing homework, and I still have evening classes. It's nothing. It's just some routine work. I've already finished dealing with it. But you've been arranging your homework tightly. Can you handle it? No problem. You don't mind, do you? Luo Nan suddenly recalled that he had repeated Bamboo Pole's example and evaluation to He Yuan. Those words weren't anything good. Of course, Luo Nan's question was really stupid. Mind what? Her Majesty Empress Wu is just taking the opportunity to knock me down a bit. Huh. Bamboo Pole certainly counted me in when he told you to consult others. Most of those words were said for me to hear. It's probably because I've been acting too hastily in the branch recently. Sister Yuan. Luo Nan didn't know what to say for a time. He knew that He Yuan was under enormous pressure from Bamboo Pole's evaluation. If another extraordinary were to express her opposition, then He Yuan's handling of matters in the future would become even more burdensome. He Yuan turned around to comfort him while he was worrying. You know your own position, and so do I. Bamboo Pole said that my goal is much clearer than yours. Actually, what he said isn't correct. Your goal is equally clear. It's just that many aspects are involved in realizing it. It's too complicated between light and dark. It's not easy to start. Yes, that's the logic. He Yuan's words really spoke to the bottom of Luo Nan's heart. His goal, whether it was to clear his grandfather's name or to protect his mother's work of art, involved many levels and many powers. They were all intertwined with each other. He didn't have the skill to solve this problem. He didn't have the corresponding sharpness to cut through the Gordian knot. It was as if He Yuan could hear his thoughts. She said, since it's like this, I might as well say a cliché. Sharpening the knife will not delay the work of chopping wood. If you really don't know where to start, then just sharpen the knife. Wait until the blade is sharp, and there will be a day when your worries will be severed. Yes, I know. Sister Yuan, I will definitely work hard. Luo Nan couldn't help feeling a bit embarrassed when he spoke to this point. Why did he sound like an elementary school student writing a pledge? He Yuan didn't mind. She said softly, your mental ability to interfere with matter has just manifested. You don't know what to do. You must be careful. If you don't want to go to Bai Xinyan's place, there's no harm in going to Divine Yu Gym. They're quite brilliant at nurturing energy, solidifying the foundation, and cultivating the body. Yes, Gym Master Xiao is truly talented. Luo Nan spoke sincerely. He Yuan paused for a moment. Then she suddenly asked, you're still cultivating the eye's orifice? Yeah. Gym Master Xiao said that the eye's orifice has just reached small success. It needs to be consolidated until yin and yang are connected from the outside.
And then?
Then you need to cultivate the ear orifice and the mouth orifice. At the very least, you need to cultivate the 3 essentials. Only then can you proceed to the next step. He Yueyin gave a light grunt and said, the 3 essentials of the 9 orifice are to clear the internal organs, solidify the essence and energy, and purify the mind. These are the proper paths of cultivation. There's no harm in cultivating them seriously. But if it's just some bizarre talk or daydream, then you don't need to pay attention to it. Ha! Luonan didn't understand what she meant by daydream for a time. By the time he came back to his senses, He Yueyin had already said goodnight to him and ended the communication. This was strange. Why did she suddenly say this? He Yueyin seemed to be quite familiar with Gym Master Xiao. Luonan was puzzled. He faintly sensed something. A knock came from the door on the first floor. It was Mo Pang, who had had his fill of playing outside, casually entering the house. Only now did Luonan remember that he still needed to investigate the conversation between his aunt and uncle. But when his soul strength covered the area, the 2 elders were already lecturing their son in the living room. There was nothing for him to do for the time being. Luonan listened for a few minutes, but he didn't gain anything. He simply collected his mind and went to do his own things. He finished his homework and took out the basic physics exercises prepared by worker Zhai. He began to ponder and tackle them. Right now, his god gear and body gear were meshed together. His energy flow was dense and comprehensive. If he really put his mind to it, there were very few people who could reach his level of concentration. Soon, 2 hours passed. It was already past 10 o'clock. Luonan stretched his back. He followed the Daoyin technique taught to him by Gym Master Xiao. He loosened his joints and relaxed them step by step. His muscles, bones, and skin were wrapped around his body. For a time, muffled sounds rang out incessantly from his body. At the same time, a warm current enshrouded him. It was extremely comfortable. Chapter 348. Night sounds. Luonan put everything down and got onto the bed. He stripped down to his underpants, adjusted his breathing, and began his night training. A thin layer of sweat covered his body after half an hour of breathing guidance, but the state of his body and mind had already recovered to their peak. The flame of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice flickered within his brain. Luonan's thoughts stirred, and the heart lantern flickered, sending the warm light into his internal organs. Gym Master Xiao once said that after the cultivation of the eye's orifice reached small success, the inner vision would be like the sun and moon illuminating the mountains and rivers. Even if one could not truly see through the wondrous attainments of life without missing anything, one could still pierce through the clouds and break through the mist. Luonan saw that the structure of his internal organs had the shape of a rampart under the spiritual light of his internal vision. It was like a high cliff and deep valley, with towering rocks. The disorderly layout was vague. He didn't care about this. He just merged his mind with his eyes. The sun and moon rotated and shone down, fixing on the gate of life in his spine. He burned and refined his essence energy, gradually pouring it into the bottom of the perineum. When the yang energy was full, it naturally surged up and seeped into his internal organs. This time, it was like water sprinkling on lava. Vital energy hissed and boiled. It was like roiling clouds, changing shape in myriad ways. Luonan felt such a sign when he burned and refined his essence energy. After a moment of shock, he was delighted. Burning the pill furnace, filling the mountain with smoke. The technique of transforming essence into qi has already reached its peak. The next step is to reach the peak of Kunlun and then open up a field of blessings. No wonder even Master Lien said that we should wait for the torrent to pour down and overflow before making a judgment. The time is right, and it's clearly today. It must be known that Luonan's body and soul were originally imbalanced. He had no choice but to use all the vital energy in his body to nourish the eye's orifice, forming a body gear. Only then did he have the opportunity to borrow the majestic and vast power of the god gear. If he hadn't comprehended the coupling technique, he might have had to toss and turn for several months. He might even have had to undergo some strengthening surgery in order to maintain that fragile balance. But things in this world always move in the opposite direction when pushed to the extreme. Luonan received his mother's blessing, comprehended the coupling technique, and crossed the most difficult juncture. The crisis transformed, and the corresponding benefits were greater. Ordinary people relied on time and effort to cultivate the internal refinement technique. If one wanted to reach the level of burning the pill furnace and filling the mountains with clouds, it was possible to cultivate for 7 days, 8 days, 9 days, or even 100 days, a year, or even 3 years. But Luo Nan was here. The power of formatting theory was far too great, and the glacial ocean hung high. Even if he only poured a little and interfered, he would still advance bravely. Ever since the heart lantern of the eye's orifice had broken the boundaries of interference, it had become unstoppable in the short 7 days. With just a few thoughts flashing through his mind, clouds gathered in the middle of his chest and abdomen. They were dyed with 5 different colors. Especially where his liver and gallbladder were, the green aura was the thickest. According to the classical theory of the East, the eye's orifice was like the mouth of a spring, with its source below. The Nan. Oh. Young. Ancient. The mechanism affected the entire body, including the liver, gallbladder, eyes, fingers, and tendons. It seemed to be bouncing around, but it was actually all connected in one breath. This was what Gym Master Xiao meant when he said, "The body is like a mountain range, densely planted with soil. The breath is like flowing water, twisting and turning." My eye's orifice reservoir is finally connected to the source. It's flowing water. Earlier, Luo Nan had exhausted all of his vital energy to open the eye's orifice, barely able to withstand the terrifying pressure of the God Wheel. The iceberg ocean continued to pour soul power into his eye's orifice. His eye's orifice was just like a reservoir with limited capacity. Even with the coupling art, the continuous impacts caused his pupils to crack with electricity. But now, the situation was different. The eye's aperture connected the qi and blood of the liver and gallbladder, and it could also circulate to the fascia of the whole body. From there, the viscera, muscles, bones, skin, and hair could all be digested one by one, and the load capacity would increase dramatically. It would truly become the body chakra, constantly rotating. In this way, it could be said that the inside was connected to the outside, and the bitterness was over before the sweetness came. Just the power of the divine wheel's nourishment alone was enough for him to enjoy for a while. It was midnight, the time when the qi in the liver flowed. After the pleasantly surprised mood passed, Luo Nan suppressed his feelings of joy and calmed his mind. He adjusted the flow of energy more and more carefully, wanting to complete the task. 2 hours passed in the blink of an eye. Luo Nan waited for the yin and yang of the liver and gallbladder to automatically adjust the fire of the heart, the water of the kidneys, and the energy to circulate. Then, Luo Nan woke up. He opened his eyes and his thoughts stirred. He had his own response, and he knew that it was around 3 in the morning. Right now, he was overflowing with energy, and his mind was healthy and refreshed. It was no longer suitable for him to sleep, but this wasn't his usual rhythm of work and rest. Just as he was mulling over what he should do, his mind stirred. Someone was talking nearby, and his name was mentioned. With the level of Luo Nan's mental senses, he could pry into the information of all living beings within a radius of several kilometers. It was just that this information was far too complex, and it had the effect of accelerating the growth of his soul strength. It increased the burden, so Luo Nan normally maintained the radius of his mental senses at around 10 meters. Most of the time, he was in a standby state, only reacting to evil thoughts, ominous intents and other dangers. But perhaps it was because his cultivation had just advanced, but the sensitivity of his mental senses had increased by a large margin. The way it appeared was quite different from before. His mind was like a calm lake, reflecting several stars. It was like the reflection of the distant starry sky. Then the corresponding information joined together and transformed, forming an even more concrete figure. The words they exchanged were all reflected in the lake of his mind. "Oh, it's aunt and uncle." "That's right. Who else could it be?" The 2 elders were in their bedroom. They leaned side by side against the headboard, conversing in low voices. It could be seen that they hadn't slept at all last night. They had been conversing all this time. Though Luo Nan possessed inconceivable mental senses, he normally wouldn't go so far as to eavesdrop. He just heard his own name, and he did that stupid thing at night. He couldn't help but feel a bit guilty, and he was even more curious. "I'll eavesdrop just once. Tonight." Luo Nan found an excuse for himself, and he truly used his heart to sense. This time, he was like an incorporeal specter, lurking in his aunt and uncle's bedroom. He could hear and see, And it was as if he was there in person. Luo Nan was already unable to recall what they had said before, but the first words that truly entered his ears caused his mind to be stimulated. Could it be that Dad, or perhaps Zhongheng's friends have come to Xia City? They've been in the wilderness for 20 years. They've gone against civilization, and they're on sensitive projects. It's already good enough that they haven't become enemies. Why would they come over? The one speaking in front was his aunt, Luo Shuqing. The dad she spoke of was naturally Luo Nan's grandfather, Luo Yuandao. Zhongheng was Luo Nan's father, Luo Zhongheng. From Luo Nan's perspective, these two names were the ones he cared about the most, even though the direction of his emotions were quite different. He immediately paid 120% of his attention. Luo Shuqing was a bit dissatisfied when she heard her husband's response. Don't play dumb. You know who I'm talking about.
Yes, I know.
But I checked the entry and exit records of the airport. Yan Yonghua has been flying back and forth across the Pacific Ocean recently. He's been to Luo City at least 5 or 6 times. The trouble he's gotten into clearly comes from within Quantum Corporation. Do you think they have influence over Quantum Corporation?
They.
Who was they? Was it related to his grandfather and father? Luo Nan didn't hear it, but he knew that the topic these two elders were talking about right now involved their family friend, Yan Yonghua. It made sense. Back then, Yan Yonghua had humiliated his family in front of everyone at the restaurant. He had vowed in all sincerity that he would take back the reputation of his old man, Yan Hong. Whether or not Yan Yonghua's words were reasonable, the endorsement of Quantum Corporation really did give people a lot of pressure. A few days passed, and this brother suddenly vanished without a trace. It was hard not to be suspicious of his anticlimactic ending. Luo Nan didn't completely understand the ins and outs of this matter, but compared to other more important matters, he didn't have the mind to ponder over these small details. But from the perspective of his aunt and uncle, the tiger skin of Quantum Corporation was still quite a deterrent to the secular world. Even if their family was considered a relatively wealthy middle-class family, they weren't on the same level when compared to a capital giant like Quantum Corporation. If things didn't go well, their family would be ruined. Luo Nan couldn't help but feel a bit ashamed when he thought of this. His aunt and uncle had been shouldering such a large amount of pressure for the past month, but they had never mentioned it to him. He was quite careless. He had forgotten about it many times. What method should he think of to appease his two elders? Luo Nan was pondering over this matter when he heard his aunt sneer. Are you looking down on vagrants? I, as an HR employee, know that vagrants have been returning to the city with great momentum in recent years. A portion of them erased their criminal records and transformed into big bosses. This isn't just 1 or 2 examples. His uncle sighed. Then you're counting on a former vagrant boss who erased his criminal record to come out and help? I didn't say that. His uncle pulled open the bedside table and took out an electronic cigarette that had been sealed for a long time. He wanted to put it in his mouth, but he stopped and held it in his hand. I'd rather they stay in the wilderness forever. These people are used to the law of the jungle, and religion is involved. There has never been a lack of madmen and ambitious people. The old man is still alive. He's a symbol at the very least. He's a constraint. I don't think they'll talk reason with us once the situation changes. If they join forces with the powers in the city, I'm afraid things will get even more lively. Luo Shuqing was quite vigilant. They're looking for you again. They haven't met, but they've called a few times. They're asking for help in changing data and the like. Whether they succeed or not, they're very polite. You're right. They're inclined to enter the city. The focus of Luo Shuqing's attention had already changed. What about Nan Nan? Did they make contact with Nan Nan? Do you mean to say that Wu Jiong? His uncle finally put the electronic cigarette in his mouth. The vapor evaporated and he sighed. I don't know. I really don't know. The husband and wife were no longer in the mood to talk in the bedroom. They just endured like this, letting the pressure of silence slowly accumulate. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts lingered for a few minutes before he felt very oppressed. He quietly withdrew. Luo Nan was stupefied after his senses withdrew. His aunt and uncle had guessed Her Majesty Empress Wu's origins due to problems with the source of their information, but their direction was completely wrong. But the information within their words made Luo Nan understand that in this world, in a certain corner of the boundless wilderness, there were some people who possessed a strange and intimate relationship with his grandfather and father. The wilderness? Vagrants? All right, he suddenly pulled out another thread. It seemed to be very far away, but it seemed to be very heavy behind it. Luo Nan lay on his bed and looked at the ceiling. His leisurely mood of looking for trouble instantly transformed into a myriad of thoughts, a feeling of impatience and depression. There were too many things he needed to do, but it was hard to accomplish them. He thought about it and realized that the little bit of internal refinement he had just obtained was nothing to be happy about. Chapter 349. Luo Nan's mind was still a mess even after being in a daze for a long time. The hour hand was already pointing to 4 o'clock. Another hour passed unknowingly. Luo Nan was in a bad mood. His mind was originally in an extremely clear state, but now it had been stirred into a pot of porridge. This won't do. Luo Nan tried to sever his terrible state of mind. He thought of He Yuan's teachings and immediately murmured, "Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood. Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood. Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood." He recited this proverb over a dozen times like a chant, forcefully replacing his chaotic thoughts. In the end, he was a bit tired. Luo Nan used the back of his hand to press his forehead. His state of mind gradually calmed down. He didn't have any new experiences, but his turbid thoughts gradually became clear. Sister Yuan's incantation was quite considerate. Actually, he recited the incantation 1,000 times and thought of 10,000 countermeasures. In the end, it all boiled down to one sentence. You're not an extraordinary. In recent months, he had followed He Yuan to grasp the world order in and out of the psychic wave network. He had followed Bamboo Pole to learn the notes of the most important people in the world. Wasn't this principle what he had learned? To put it bluntly, the inner world was a simple society built by a group of inhumans who had awakened their abilities. Even though they were influenced by the secular world, money, resources, and connections played a large role. In the end, personal strength was still the most important. Why did Bamboo Pole want him to rely on Her Majesty Empress Wu? It was because Her Majesty Empress Wu was an extraordinary. Her strength was profound, her resources were abundant, and she was revered by others. She could handle matters that Luo Nan was unable to handle, and she could solve problems that Luo Nan was unable to solve. In this sense, Her Majesty Empress Wu could be swapped with any other extraordinary. The result would be the same. At most, the difference would be whether or not they were easy to serve. Of course, if Luo Nan himself was an extraordinary, then there would be no need for a swap. Most things would be impossible to happen. Even if they did happen, they would quickly dissolve. This was the special status of extraordinaries. If Luo Nan could solve it himself, he naturally wouldn't want to do it for someone else. But the reality was that he was still far from being an extraordinary. Right now, he could barely be considered a blunt blade. He needed to grind the blade to an unstoppable edge, and he needed to smash a lot of hard work. He Yuan used the proverb, "Sharpening the blade won't delay the chopping of wood," to advise him. She was mostly worried that Luo Nan would lose his patience and confidence due to the difficult and tedious process. Luo Nan wasn't that frivolous and useless, but it would be a lie to say that he was extremely patient. He was willing to put in blood, sweat, and tears for the sharpening knife. No matter how hard it was, he could support it. But if this process was a clumsy, slow, and meticulous process, he would not be able to stand it. Her grandfather, who was on the verge of death, could not wait any longer, and neither could the ferocious enemy. He didn't want to leave behind irreparable regrets, and he didn't want his head to be chopped off by a powerful enemy before he succeeded. Harder, faster. This was the cultivation rhythm that Luo Nan hoped for. To do this, he could only rely on two things. One was formatting theory and the corresponding coupling method. The other was the internal cultivation method that Gym Master Xiao had imparted to him, which was to nurture one's essence and qi. The latter was personally guided by Hall Master Xiao, so the route was clear and orderly. There was no need to worry about making a mistake, making it the most efficient. However, this kind of internal refinement technique, be it the breathing or the opening of acupoints, was very particular about fire control and could not be rash. Just like this moment. Luo Nan had just brought the eye's orifice to perfection, and it was no longer suitable for him to make hasty movements. He needed to calm down for several days before planning his next move. Then, there was only one thing left for him to figure out and achieve some results. Formatting theory. Luo Nan knew very well that the astonishing progress of his internal refinement cultivation was due to the grinding and influence of formatting theory, transforming the powerful potential energy of the vast glacial ocean. Now that the cultivation of the eye's orifice was complete, he still needed to rely on formatting theory for the next step of cultivation. No matter how one looked at it, formatting theory was his foundation. He couldn't slack off in the related research. And there was a state that was the most suitable for pondering over formatting theory. The time was 4:10. Luo Nan looked at his daily schedule through the hexa ear. There was still around an hour before the normal morning exercise time. Luo Nan estimated the time limit, but he didn't get up. He just squinted his eyes and silently cried out, "Come out!" The void chains trembled, and a pulling force rose out of thin air. It pulled his soul out of his body with a jolt. Yes, what Luo Nan needed to do was to go into an out-of-body state. Formatting theory itself was flawed, and the hidden dangers were great. The unconventional increase in soul strength led to an imbalance between body and soul. And the time when the increase was the fiercest was often when the soul was in an out-of-body state. Ever since the incident at Frost River Reality, Luo Nan's situation with the imbalance between body and soul had reached a critical level. He had no choice but to seal this method and not use it again. But was formatting theory still formatting theory if it couldn't increase soul strength? Luo Nan had inherited his grandfather's theory. He had the desire to reform and perfect it. This was a process of constant trial and error. How could he make mistakes? Naturally, he had to make a mistake in order to correct it. In the past, Luo Nan's body and soul were imbalanced. His condition was critical, and he lost the space to make mistakes. But now his cultivation had advanced, and his body gear was constantly rotating. His foundation had become more solid, and his ability to deal with risks had greatly increased. Some things needed to be put on the agenda. If he didn't act now, would he have to wait for death to come? Would he have to close his eyes and wait for death? Luo Nan didn't want to close his eyes and wait for death. He wanted to open his eyes and look at the world. He wanted to use the perspective of formatting theory to make scientific judgments and then use practice to verify the results. He pushed forward layer by layer like this, using the greatest effort and the fastest speed to climb to the level of extraordinary. I can do it. I must do it. Luo Nan's conviction gradually became clear. The soul body floating outside his body was like a fish. It gently swayed and submerged into the boundless and boundless sea of the mind. The range of his senses instantly expanded 10-fold. 100-fold. His thoughts stirred slightly, and he looked at his seemingly sleeping fleshly body. He also swept his gaze over his silent and sleepless elder. His soul body then flashed and submerged into the void. Without the burden of his fleshly body, the movement speed of his soul body only depended on the method and technique he used to interfere with space. It wasn't strange for him to travel several kilometers with a single thought. In the blink of an eye, Luo Nan was far away from the community he was in. He went deep into the depths of the metropolis that was about to wake up. His mind wandered through the metropolis. The feeling of familiarity and strangeness increased layer by layer. In the past, every time Luo Nan's soul left his body, it was always during critical and pressing moments. It was rare for him to purely observe and feel like this. The life sketches of all living beings appeared one after another within the range of his senses. Together, they formed a deep starry sky that continued to expand. The living starry sky and the true night sky interweaved to form a labyrinth on the mental and material planes. There might even be unknown treasures hidden within. This was an experience that was hard to come by under normal circumstances. Luo Nan wasn't bewitched by the labyrinth. He quickly confirmed his direction and moved like a ghost in the night. He was hidden and then disappeared, but he advanced in a straight line. He didn't avoid tall buildings, flying cars, or light rails. He passed right through them. It was 4:20 in the morning. A mere 10 minutes later, Luo Nan's soul body was already flying above the Pingjiang district. The campus of Acumen College and the towering buildings of Cloud City Water Village entered the range of his senses. Chapter 350. Luo Nan was shocked after confirming the time. His aunt's house was approximately 80 kilometers away from Acumen College. Given the city's speed limit, the flying car would arrive in an hour. He had only spent 10 minutes just now. In other words, the flying speed of his soul body was close to 500 kilometers per hour. Luo Nan had gotten a rough sense of the flying speed of his soul when he first realized the out-of-body state. He just felt that it was fast, but he never expected it to be this fast. It must be known that he was just casually flying. He was far from reaching his limits. It was completely possible for him to increase his speed by a large margin if he truly exerted his strength. Perhaps it was catalyzed by his progress during this period of time? The radius of the main city area of Xia City and the satellite cities was no more than 300 to 400 kilometers. In other words, he could easily reach any location in Xia City within an hour. It was also possible for him to travel a full circle in Xia City in a single night. He could even travel several thousand kilometers. This was the marvels of the out-of-body state. Luo Nan just didn't know if there would be any problems with the order frame formed by the God Gear and Body Gear if his soul body was too far away. Luo Nan immediately slowed down the flying speed of his soul. He divided a bit of his mental energy to sense the changes in his fleshly body 80 kilometers away. The out-of-body state had quite a large effect on the order frame of Luo Nan's body and soul. The pressure of soul strength on his body was practically zero, but it had also separated from the external neuron. It was no longer the thick and orderly structure of a vast ocean of icebergs. The God Gear didn't live up to its name. Luo Nan tried to activate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, but there was no response. Only now was he convinced that a corresponding material carrier was needed in order to effectively interfere with reality on the mental plane. It was just like Luo Nan's order frame. No matter how strong the God Gear was, it was useless without the coordination of the Body Gear. Luo Nan couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. This way, the actual use of the out-of-body state was rather limited. He needed to prepare for a rainy day. He needed to make a few more human-faced arachnids for backup before the Wraith sign returned. Luo Nan pondered over this matter, but he had some doubts. Were mentally enhanced ability users like Old Man Yu and Mr. Bai people who undoubtedly possessed the ability of out-of-body state? Were their out-of-body states the same? If not, how did they display their abilities normally? He thought left and right, but he was unable to grasp the gist of it. He wanted to give He Yuan a suggestion to add an out-of-body state application course. In any case, it was impossible to solve this problem tonight. Luo Nan calmed his mind, discarding the useless distracting thoughts. His soul body flickered, and when it reappeared, he was already in the air above the buildings of Cloud City Water Village. He locked onto the observation platform above Ocean Sky Cloud City, and he floated down. At 4 o'clock in the morning, there would naturally be no one on the observation deck. It was cold and silent. Though Luo Nan's soul strength did not affect the material plane, it collided with the consciousness of a living being on the mental plane. In the central crystal pillar of Ocean Sky Cloud City, the mutant devil ray that was originally suspended in the water and resting suddenly became excited. Its huge flat body swayed, and as it spun in the air habitually, it was like a huge drill that was rapidly moving upwards. It rapidly advanced towards the top of the crystal pillar, where the heavenly ocean lake was located on the observation deck. Since there was such a ferocious creature entrenched here, Farsky Cloud couldn't let his guard down. Every night, there were professionals on duty. Inside and outside the crystal pillar, there were also different types of surveillance cameras at work. As soon as the devil ray moved, its special posture triggered the alarm of the surveillance system. Groans could be heard everywhere in the building's central control room. This monster is going crazy again. It's hundreds of thousands just for one round of trouble. Hurry up and release the baffle. The so-called baffle was a temporary defensive device installed by Cloud City Water Village after the devil ray smashed through the tempered glass at the bottom of the heavenly ocean lake. It had no other use than to prevent the devil ray from smashing a huge hole in the heavenly ocean lake. Luo Nan could feel the chaos within the building. He felt quite embarrassed, so he used psychic waves to support himself and pacify the devil ray's restless emotions. The devil ray's intelligence was passable. It had once been suppressed by the high-imitation human-faced arachnid, but under Luo Nan's control, it felt all sorts of novel, interesting, and extremely powerful states. As a result, it was both respectful and fearful of Luo Nan's special psychic wave frequency. Right now, it was already ranked as a staff member of the societal format diagram. According to the definition of the order, it could be called a believer or a follower. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts descended, and the devil ray didn't dare to resist. It immediately stopped its momentum and turned its body. It saw the fish and shrimps that were fleeing in all directions, alarmed by its actions. It immediately swallowed a bunch of them and let out some blood over at Fairsky Cloud City. There was no need to mention just how great of a loss the Devil Ray, which had woken up in the middle of the night, would bring to the relevant parties. Luo Nan's soul body stayed on the viewing platform, observing the wetland jungle to the north of Acumen College. He remained motionless for a long time. There was gear within the jungle, but the viewing platform was over a dozen kilometers away from the wetland jungle. The sky was dark and silent, making it difficult for ordinary people to see it. Luo Nan could see it. A distance of over a dozen kilometers had already far exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's mental senses when his body and soul were one. Back then, he had used the coupling of the god gear and body gear to stimulate the heart lantern of the eye's orifice to rub his psychic light and illuminate the earth below. Only then was he able to bring gear within the jungle into his clairvoyance. Now that his mind had wandered to this point, the coupling of the god gear and body gear was no longer possible. However, after his out-of-body state, the range of his senses had increased explosively by 10 times. He was able to see clearly under pure observation. The problem was that no matter how much he observed, it was hard to trigger the wondrous sensation of gear being the eye of heaven and earth, the universe grand format. This result was not unexpected at all. From the moment Luo Nan's heart lantern illuminated gear, he truly understood that the wondrous aspects contained within gear could not be seen by the naked eye. Mental senses could not illuminate it clearly. Only the two modes of sight and mental senses, through coupling, could cross and grind each other. Only then could one touch the reality behind the surface and determine how the law and order operated, transformed, and nurtured within the void of heaven and earth. Pure mental senses were still lacking in meaning. If it were possible, Luo Nan obviously wished to truly go to the viewing platform and observe gear with clairvoyance day and night. He wanted to feel and comprehend the wondrous aspects within. But this week, whether it was the viewing platform or the interior of gear, there were demonic shadows flickering one after another. It was a bad mood. Whatever. Let's just get closer and observe. Luo Nan's out-of-body state of mind had absolutely not chosen this place on a whim. He had a clear goal and plan. His soul body flew away from Ocean Sky Cloud City, and with another thought, he shifted to the wetland jungle. Gear was right in front of him. Right now, the lights within the building were completely extinguished. The pitch-black cave was completely devoid of people. Entering this place at this time and in this sort of situation required a bit of courage. Well, if someone really did come, Luo Nan did not mind testing the quality of this fellow. Unfortunately, there was no one. Luo Nan's soul body passed through the wall and entered the interior of gear. His mental senses naturally covered every space and every nook and cranny of the 12 floors, leaving nothing out. He could do all of this when his soul and body were one. He could do it even better because he had the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, which was more suited to the environment of gear. But it was still the same old saying. There were people in front of him, and there were eyes behind his head. He could not act willfully. Only when his internal refinement was successful, and he reckoned that he could resist the pressure of the explosive increase in his soul strength, could this matter be accomplished. Chapter 351. The wetland jungle during the early hours of the morning was perhaps the quietest time of the day. The activity of the birds and beasts in the forest had already dropped to the lowest level. Most of the sounds transmitted to the interior of the building had been isolated. In such an environment, even the slightest abnormality would be magnified, giving people an unusual feeling. Luo Nan's soul body remained motionless as he carefully experienced it. A dozen or so seconds later, he was convinced that the chill was not an illusion. It even possessed a certain mode of operation. It was like a spiraling strand of air that traveled back and forth within the building of gear. Moreover, as the chill circulated, the fine dripping sound of the building of gear accompanied it from beginning to end. Perhaps it was because he had heard it for a long time, but he always felt that there was a subtle connection between the two. It was so subtle that it could give birth to an illusion at any time. Luo Nan's out-of-body state allowed the precision of his mental senses to climb to the highest peak. Otherwise, let alone this connection, he might not even be able to detect the hidden chill. That's right. That's right. Luo Nan liked this sort of discovery. This detail was quite in line with his research and judgment of the mysteries of gear. It was a good start for his exploration of the spirit wonder. He nearly stayed here to do further research, but his brain heated up for a few seconds. In the end, he remembered the main objective of today's operation. He could only suppress his impulse and make his incorporeal soul body penetrate through the ground. He advanced toward the central control room on the 4th underground floor. The feeling of using a soul body to penetrate through walls and into the ground was very marvelous. His soul body relied on mental senses. Ordinary matter would not cause any interference, but Luo Nan was used to the senses of a human body. He could not help but have some knowledge obstructions in his mind. In his eyes, the earth and steel structure formed layer after layer of shadows. They were like thick clouds that assaulted his face. At first glance, they looked majestic, but when he collided with them, they vanished like smoke. It was to the point where he nearly lost his sense of direction. He was unable to distinguish whether he was in the sky or in the ground. This sort of feeling triggered a memory from the bottom of his heart. A week ago, a similar scene had occurred, but it was more realistic. The grayish-white clouds penetrated with a bloody glow, and they assaulted his face just like now. They presented him with an inconceivably vast world. Today, Luo Nan quietly came precisely to retrace that inconceivable experience. He had wanted to do this a long time ago. It was just that the Xia City branch kept a close eye on him during this period of time due to the mess that couldn't be cleaned up. He was practically protected 24 hours a day. He was sent to school and picked up after school. Shuelei hated that he couldn't not leave the campus at all. When he returned home, there was a sentry shift outside in the middle of the night. Needless to say, Gear's construction had always been in the middle of construction. Every passerby's horse powder and ink covered the field. Inside and outside, there were surveillance cameras. There really were eyes on all sides. They couldn't split themselves into two. They simply couldn't find an opportunity. Now that he finally had the qualifications to leave his body, he naturally came over to try it out. Up until now, the development of the situation was very much to his liking. Because he wanted to trace back, he had purposely gone to Ocean Sky Cloud City to observe from afar. And after arriving at Gear, the first place he chose was the starting point of his previous experience, the central control room located on the 4th underground floor. Luo Nan had already seen it yesterday afternoon. The central control room had been renovated, and a brand new console had been installed. The holographic projection showed that the equipment was in a standby state right now. Only 2 or 3 electronic lights flickered. Luo Nan stood before the operating console. The memories in his mind were like wave after wave of returning tides at the mouth of the sea. They surged and surged passionately, causing what was originally a short scene to be like a vast expanse of space, boundless and endless. Luo Nan was clearly a soul body, but he still instinctively took a deep breath. Come. Now is the time to witness a miracle. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts touched the console, and he extended a force towards the inner layer to capture the feeling within his memories. The console was ice cold. The electronic lights flickered. Then, there was no more response. Luo Nan waited for a full 20 seconds before he dared to confirm that his attempt at tracing back had met with the most ruthless failure. How could this be? Luo Nan still remembered the experience of that day. He still remembered the entire process of being moved from the central control room to the tree hole 1,000 meters away. He remembered that he saw the console being blasted into ruins back then. That fellow called Tank had used this to destroy the fire safety module. He tried to reactivate it, so he used the external neuron to connect directly to the underlying system. When he connected to the energy module, a chaotic cloud suddenly flew about. Ha! That's right. The external neuron. Luo Nan's soul body circled in place 5 or 6 times, but he still found it hard to dispel his feelings of vexation. He was truly muddle-headed. The external neuron was extremely likely to be the primer, the key in the situation back then. Otherwise, wouldn't it be possible for anyone to come in and pry into the astonishing secrets of Gear? His mother, who designed Gear all those years ago, and the one who possessed the external neuron, used this train of thought as insurance. This was the most reasonable choice. He just wanted to open the treasure, but he forgot the key. Fine. This trip was a waste. He would look for an opportunity next time. Hold on. It was only 4:30 in the morning. There was still time. With the flying speed of his soul body, he could completely make a round trip. Luo Nan's soul body flew up with a single thought. It passed through the layers of earth, stone, and metal structures, directly leaping into the air above the building of Gear. Luo Nan originally wanted to leave immediately, but he suddenly felt something as his soul body traveled through the interior of the building. The chill that lingered in the air seemed to cut into many parts of his soul body, rippling with ripples. The feeling was quite marvelous. Luo Nan couldn't help but think of the question from before. His soul body stopped, and his mental senses naturally covered the entire building. He took the entire structure of gear into his heart. There seemed to be no end to the marvels of gear. On the outside, gear was a tiny component that was seamlessly embedded within the heaven and earth format. On the inside, there were subtle and exquisite components. Together, they formed a harmonious whole. According to the direction of Luo Nan's recent studies, gear could be described as a precise operating mechanical system. Luo Nan had been observing endlessly over the past few days, dividing them one by one. He was able to roughly discern that there was a central control room, an underground laboratory, an above-ground laboratory, an activity room, an atrium, and other relatively independent areas within this building. They were all components of this machine, and they realized their respective functions. The machine was endlessly operating, but each component was fixed. This created a problem. If the components didn't move, then what moved? A proper engineer might go crazy when faced with this problem, but Luo Nan had been continuously influenced by the way of thinking of the inner world over the past few days. He very naturally switched to a different train of thought. If the components didn't move, then what moved was some sort of supernatural power. Some knowledge of the mystic arts was involved in the cultural classes he attended. For example, Eastern diagrams, Western magical arrays, and a few other similar things. Ability users used materials, temperature, air pressure, topography, and so on to set things up. They were able to draw upon the flow of energy to construct the marvelous structure of condensed air. The researchers of the society even added the legendary 8-formation diagram of Wuho as a reference. Luo Nan didn't care about the 8-formation diagram of Wuho. He was just driven by a new thought that popped up in his mind. He flew up a certain distance and looked down from a distance. He scanned the building from the inside to the outside several times, using this to open up a new train of thought. He thought, isn't that coldness growing in the dark the flow of energy? According to what he learned from worker Zhai over the past few days, a normal mechanical system should have a prime mover providing power, a working part realizing its functions, and a transmission device effectively connecting the power and working parts. Then there was the control and operation part and other auxiliary components. Making Luo Nan, a mediocre engineer apprentice, distinguish the marvelous design of this seamless mechanical structure was truly a difficult task. But with the flow of energy, Luo Nan was able to roughly determine where the energy was being transmitted, where the energy was being stored, and where the energy was being used. Luo Nan's mental senses immediately followed the coldness of the energy flow inside and out. He smoothed it out a few times, eliminating the components one by one. He gradually narrowed the range until he reached the westernmost side of gear. This place was an atrium with a diameter of 12 meters and a depth of 50 meters. According to Luo Nan's perception, the layers of coldness of the energy flow had different sources, but in the end, they all accumulated and revolved here. Therefore, the drip 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 was the clearest here. Luo Nan's soul body sank directly into the atrium area. He entered and sensed with the answer in mind. Sure enough, the psychic pressure of the flow of energy flow was a level higher than in other parts of the building. When Luo Nan's soul body cut in, the mental plane clearly rippled. It was like a stone thrown into a deep well. Luo Nan was able to confirm that the energy flow accumulated here was exquisite and subtle. And reality told him that if it weren't for the fact that his soul was in an out-of-body state, greatly increasing the precision of his senses, he probably wouldn't have been able to capture the changes within. But what happened after the energy flow accumulated and revolved? Why did Luo Nan have an impression of a deep well? It was because the atrium seemed to be lacking something relative to the amount of energy that had accumulated. It lacked the order to control the energy flow. It lacked the decisive element. Was it the external neuron? Or perhaps? Luo Nan floated in the atrium and pondered silently for a moment. Then he suddenly gave his soul body a boost. With his current abilities, doing the relevant boost was as easy as drinking cold water. The visualization diagram of a tetrahedron, an inscribed sphere, and an inscribed sphere immediately appeared in the void, wrapping the soul body within. When this diagram manifested in the atrium, Luo Nan discovered that the surrounding slightly cold energy flow was stirred. The flow of energy increased in speed. It passed through and coiled inside and outside the diagram, moving step by step. With the stirring pole, the accumulated energy flow became much more orderly, and it became much more solid. Especially some scattered information. Because of this, they gathered together and gradually formed logic. There's a way. Luo Nan's senses toward the circulation of energy flow grew clearer and clearer. Luo Nan's mental senses were even painted with a smear of color. A slightly grayish glow gradually filled in. Luo Nan was no stranger to this. Chapter 352. The grayish-white radiance was a form of encouragement for Luo Nan. He couldn't help thinking. Could it be that he didn't need the external neuron to reproduce the situation back then? Luo Nan wanted to know more, so his mental senses naturally expanded outwards. But he discovered in the next moment that his soul strength was being restrained. It was being restrained within the atrium. It was unable to break through the outer wall no matter what. It just spun within the atrium, its speed rapidly rising. Soul strength didn't have kinetic energy. Soul strength didn't count as a vector. These were matters on the philosophical level within the society. Luo Nan was unable to give an accurate definition. But whether it was a feeling or an illusion, his soul strength undoubtedly displayed a similar state. This made him think of his junior high physics class. He had seen particle accelerators. Charged particles repeatedly accelerated within a vacuum electric field, accumulating more and more energy before finally achieving a bombardment. This was what Luo Nan felt right now. His soul strength was restrained in this manner. It spun, forming and enduring enormous waves of psychic pressure, each higher than the last. It was to the extent that he gradually lost precise perception of the material world. Instead, the structure of the mental plane was forced to emerge. 1,000 layers of curtains flew in the air. They warped with the rising psychic pressure. Those far away were pulled closer, and those near were thrown away. It looked like a chaotic mess. But for some unknown reason, after a few changes, the thousands of curtains actually interweaved into a relatively stable structure. No matter how much the mental plane warped, the main body rarely changed. Even though it was still complex to the point of making one go crazy. This scene seems familiar. Stop. Luo Nan decisively gave up on analyzing. The deeper he went into understanding the mental plane, the more he realized the profoundness and difficulty within. There were practically no limits to it. It really could drain a person's energy dry. Right now, he really didn't have the spare mental energy to consider other directions. Luo Nan's soul strength had already been catalyzed to a certain limit after the continuous rotation of acceleration. Soon, his perception on the mental plane began to collapse. Then even his perception of rotation and pressurization were lost. The corresponding thoughts were obliterated. It was like a skyscraper with its structural framework erased. It instantly collapsed and fell apart. Luo Nan suddenly sunk into a field of primal chaos. If one were to say that a bit of consciousness still remained in the situation, then it was probably just existence itself. The world came to a standstill. Then it exploded. There was an indescribable period of time. Perhaps it was a second. Perhaps it was an hour. Luo Nan was completely unaware of what had happened. By the time he regained his basic senses, he sensed that the feeble sense of existence that was left in him was expanding rapidly in the form of greed. All the senses and thinking abilities that he had lost earlier were being retrieved and digested again. As for the spiritual pressure that kept rising, it disappeared without a trace. His soul body also became light and clean, transparent from inside out. Everything was going back to normal, everything was getting better, but everything was different again. In fact, a brand new world had already appeared before Luo Nan's eyes. The grayish-white light appeared once again, and as a common base color, it outlined a blurry and boundless silhouette. When he looked closer, he saw layers of clouds, smoke, and ice crystals. Between the cracks of the clouds, there was a blood-red color flowing. It seemed that a raging fire was burning in the lower regions. Luo Nan stared at all of this. He spent some time to confirm that it wasn't an illusion. It wasn't a memory. It was a scene that happened in the present and was absorbed by his mental senses. This wasn't the first time he had seen a similar scene. Although the process last week was different, he still immersed himself in the scene. He went deep within and underwent a short yet inconceivable journey through the clouds. Success. This was the place. Luo Nan wanted to raise his arms and shout, but unfortunately, this wasn't something that his soul body could do. He could only settle for the next best thing. He fiercely pounced forward to welcome the astral wind that was wrapped in ice particles in his memories. Wait a minute. Where was the wind? Luo Nan finally discovered an anomaly. He tried to control his soul body to penetrate deep into the endless layers of clouds in front of him. But no matter how much strength he exerted, he was unable to get even an inch closer. It was as if there was an incorporeal glass in front of him that split the two sides apart. Then another problem popped up. Luo Nan discovered that he was unable to enjoy the panoramic view of his soul body. Instead, he was restricted. It was similar to a bird's-eye view. Combined with the feeling of the incorporeal glass, it was like sitting on an airplane. He was separated from the thick glass of the porthole to survey the boundless sea of clouds. If Luo Nan hadn't experienced this for the first time, he would probably praise the marvelous scene before his eyes. But there were no ifs in this world. There was only reality. This situation where he was stuck between a rock and a hard place was absolutely not what Luo Nan wanted. Moreover, this extended to a problem. He wasn't in the atrium of Gears building right now. He hadn't moved into the cloud world. Then where was he? Luo Nan felt an irresistible repulsive force as soon as this thought arose. This force wasn't polite at all. It slammed him down from his position that was infinitely close to the cloud world. Then the world spun around him, and he could not help but shout. By the time he came back to his senses, the world had returned to its most ordinary appearance. He returned to the atrium of Gears building. It's really Motherf ****. Luo Nan forcibly erased the dirty words and thoughts in between. He had nothing to say when faced with his mother's masterpiece. He could only sulk with himself. He returned to the normal world, and his panoramic senses returned as well. They covered the interior and exterior of Gear, and the relevant structure of the atrium, the gathering energy, and all of it were incorporated into his clairvoyance. Did he become obedient now? Luo Nan gritted his teeth in hatred. He was driven by his emotions, and the range of his mental senses simply exploded once more. He had broken free from the restraints of the atrium, and he was no longer isolated by the barrier. A retaliatory rebound was a matter of course. The feelers of his mental senses extended 15 kilometers in the blink of an eye, and they extended to a 20-kilometer radius. They easily covered Acumen College, and they even included the building complex of Cloud City Water Village. They even included most of the large living district. When Luo Nan woke up from his own emotions, he was immediately stupefied. This wasn't his directional clairvoyance from Ocean Sky Cloud City. This was an omnidirectional radiation. A 20-kilometer radius was an area of over 1,000 square kilometers. The entire Pingjiang district wasn't this big. There was also the enormous space between heaven and earth. Even if it was a simplified version of the life sketches that only involved information related to living beings, the terrifying amount of information was still an astronomical figure. There was an instant when Luo Nan thought that he was about to explode. He used all of his strength to restrain his out-of-control mental senses to reduce the impact. But soon, the latest feedback arrived. It seemed to be very illusory. Chapter 353. His mental senses covered an area of over 1,000 square kilometers. At the same time, he drew the life sketches of hundreds of thousands of living beings. He projected 1 trillion stars. The range and level of his senses were outstanding. He could not determine the limits of his soul body's endurance. However, the first impression Luo Nan got was far from perfect. He could not help but think, could it be that formatting theory was stimulated by studying here with his mother? Could it be that formatting theory had an explosion of uncontrollable growth? Luo Nan knew that there were risks in the out-of-body state, but this extent of expansion and this explosive rhythm far exceeded his expectations. Even if he had the external neuron to prop up the God gear, even if his liver energy was leaking and the body gear was constantly rotating, his fleshly body might not be able to support it. He did not dare to stay in the atrium for long. He immediately soared up. However, he felt a subtle feeling when he intersected with the residual energy that had yet to dissipate. A thought suddenly popped up in his mind. It seemed that the changes in his soul body were quite large this time. The details of his mental senses were abnormal. They far exceeded any of his previous experiences. Perhaps it was not just an increase in quantity. It involved other aspects. Unfortunately, the details were too many and too trivial. The feeling was fuzzy, and he was unable to make a judgment in a short amount of time. Luo Nan could not figure it out, so he did not force it. The appearance of a problem often led to other problems. Right now, he needed to return home as soon as possible. Putting aside the external neuron, he needed to confirm whether or not the structure of his body and soul had collapsed into imbalance once more. Luo Nan's thoughts spun in the gears, and he set foot on his return journey. He flew under the gloomy dawn sky, and his mental senses had long since covered the path back. Within his all-pervasive penetrative senses, skyscrapers were like gathering smoke. They were nearly nothingness. Luo Nan charged forward in a straight line. His flying soul was like a phantom, almost like a ghost. The more he did this, the more he felt that something was wrong. His soul strength had certainly grown, but after a period of buffering, Luo Nan felt that the amount of growth was not as terrifying as it had been before. At most, the Wraith sign had hunted once and fed him back. After he achieved the body gear, there was room for this level of growth. But at the same time, the range of his senses, which constantly changed as he moved at high speed, became more substantial. Not only did it break through a radius of 20 kilometers, but it was even slowly growing. Where was the foundation of this growth? Luo Nan's mind was distracted, but his speed far exceeded when he came over. He only used 6 minutes in total, and he had yet to reach his limit. The situation at home did not change. After tossing and turning for most of the night, Uncle and Aunt did not know when they had fallen asleep. The house was very quiet. About a kilometer away, on the street of the community, the security guards stationed by the association were guarding the relevant surveillance equipment with bright eyes. However, whether it was the instruments or the security personnel, none of them had any reaction to Luo Nan's mind wandering. It wasn't that they were incompetent. Luo Nan was a target that moved within the polar domain of the Abyss region the moment his soul left his body. Most B-rank powers would be blind even if they came. Luo Nan's soul body resided on the roof of his home. Below him, his peacefully sleeping body was like an enormous whirlpool. It had an instinctive attraction towards soul bodies. Luo Nan didn't go in right away when faced with this kind of attraction. He was a bit hesitant. If he wanted to test the growth of his soul strength, the endurance of his physical body would be a good touchstone. However, there was also a risk. If he couldn't fit it in, it wouldn't be considered a fatal crisis, but he could probably compete for the most hilarious, homeless spot in the history of the association. Bai Xinyan, who had recently been suspended from her job, might be more than happy to stuff him back into the health pod.
TSK.
Luo Nan was dissatisfied with his own indecisiveness. He would be stabbed no matter what. He couldn't avoid it. What was he hesitating for? With a single thought, Luo Nan's soul body sank. His body froze, transforming into endless waves of soul strength. It rushed into the whirlpool formed by his body. It accurately locked onto the external neuron and poured into it in an orderly manner. When the external neuron was filled to the brim, it naturally overflowed, forming the image of an iceberg vast ocean. But with the external neuron as a frame, it wouldn't flood in disorder. And so, the God Gear was formed. The pressure his body endured started from zero and continued to rise. On the bed, Luo Nan's eyelids moved slightly. He maintained a seemingly open state as he experienced the changes in the order frame. The pressure continued to rise like the scouring of a great tide. His God Gear and body gear were like water wheels. They rumbled and spun in the stream of water. Not only did they dissolve the frontal assault, they borrowed the force to transform and nourish the blessed land. It seemed like there was no problem. Luo Nan had been cultivating in the eye's orifice all this time, but the upper limit of what a mere orifice could bear was far from being able to fully utilize the power of the God Gear. He could only protect his lower limit, which was to ensure that the God Gear and body gear could mesh with each other and rotate in harmony. He had a lot to fear. But today, his liver energy was unblocked, and his orifice eye was clear to his internal organs. His lower limit had unconsciously increased by an enormous amount. The God Gear and body gear meshed and rotated, speeding up the circulation of his blood and energy. His consumption increased dramatically. But under the replenishment of his liver blood, it was like a charge. It nourished and grew, lasting for a long time. And once the body gear absorbed too much energy, the internal fire would grow strong, and the liver energy would naturally disperse to the fascia, the fingers, and the eye's orifice. It would accelerate their growth, recuperation, and tempering. Like this, the strength of his body seemed to increase. From this, it seemed that not only was there no problem, but his cultivation speed seemed to have increased. This was absolutely good news. Of course, the increase in his soul strength was still within a controllable range. This was even better news. Luo Nan finally confirmed that the uncontrollable growth of his soul body was just an illusion. But the explosive increase in the range of his mental senses was a fact.
Why?
He simply flipped over and sat up. He picked up the notebook on the bedside table, flipped to a blank page, and started writing and drawing. According to normal logic, doing the same work would achieve results several times greater than before. The entire process of doing work would naturally be more efficient, and the method of use would be improved. But the current situation was that every link of operation was exactly the same. What should be done was done. The only thing that changed was the soul body itself. But the factor of increment had already been eliminated. What remained was structure? Essence? What was the soul body? What form did the soul body exist in? Such questions far exceeded the scope of Luo Nan's research. Luo Nan had developed dozens of years of inner world research, including thousands of years of history of civilization related to religion, philosophy, and mystic arts. Yet he was unable to come up with a comprehensive explanation that was sufficient to convince everyone. Luo Nan could not solve it. He could only set it aside and draw closer to reality. He needed to seize the moment and make another trip to Gear to verify the use of the external neuron. The external neuron. How do I bring it? Chapter 354. Reality proved Luo Nan's worries. When he used his habitual out-of-body method to pull out his soul body, the external neuron did not react at all. It continued to coil within his brain like a long snake of electricity. It had a calm feeling of, "Who cares where you go? I'm right here." But saying that the external neuron was completely uncontrollable would be an unfair accusation. When Luo Nan used the traditional method, a mere thought caused the external neuron to obediently change locations within his brain. The coiling electricity flickered and flickered, echoing from afar. "See, I knew it wouldn't be easy." Luo Nan made a few strokes on his notebook. The problem still existed, but the concept in his mind grew clearer and clearer. The out-of-body state and the driving of thought seemed to be matters on the mental plane, but they weren't. According to the theories he had recently learned, the former was not necessary. The latter was actually a type of guiding energy with thoughts. He described the relationship between several elements in this way. The energy contained in the human body's functions was called vital energy. It flowed through the entire body like water. The external neuron was like a parasitic fish in the water. Luo Nan's thoughts were like a small pebble. His thoughts did not have the power to directly drive the external neuron, but they struck the water and created waves. They were enough to startle the fish, causing the external neuron to make changes. As for why the external neuron was able to accurately judge his thoughts, was it an intelligent judgment? Or was it a more subtle mechanism? Luo Nan was leaning towards the latter. From the looks of it, an interference force must exist on the mental plane and the material plane in order to drive the external neuron. Then I have no choice. Should I reverse the flow of my true energy? Luo Nan laughed to himself. The most effective method for him to realize interference force was the heart lantern of the eye's orifice, formed from the coupling of the God gear and body gear. Due to the overwhelming superiority of the God gear over the body gear, and due to the guidance of practical problems, Luo Nan had always exerted force from the mental plane to the material plane. Now, he had to make a great reversal. The order frame of his God gear and body gear coupling allowed him to adjust the direction of application. In theory, there were no obstacles at all. However, the initial operation had to be carried out within his own brain. For the sake of caution, he had a very strict control over the strength of his interference. The light of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice flickered. It no longer shone upon the outside world, nor did it penetrate his internal organs. Instead, it shone with the electric snake of the external neuron within his brain, gradually pouring warmth into it. The external neuron vibrated vigorously, crackling with electricity. It seemed a bit uncomfortable. Sometimes it coiled and sometimes it stretched out. It was like a transformation of a heavenly dragon. It was marvelous beyond compare. If one did not consider the consequences, it would be like playing with a novel toy. It was very interesting. Luonan noticed that the shape of the neuron in the outside world was changing all the time, but its essential state did not change. It was still the core framework of the divine wheel. The structure of the iceberg ocean was powerful and heavy, yet stable and thick. Luonan had a question. Was the core of the god gear? Luonan didn't have a clear answer, but he had an indescribable comprehension. At least at this moment, the difference between the material and the mental wasn't that clear. He carefully experienced this feeling, strengthening the interference between the mental and material planes. The flame of the heart lantern in the eye's orifice soared, gradually turning into a furnace to burn and refine the real gold that was the external neuron. He not fire. He did not know gear. Luonan had a similar feeling when he followed Gym Master Xiao's teachings to refine his life essence. Only by truly doing it could he receive certain information and brand certain imprints. Perhaps this principle could also be applied to the external neuron? In any case, Luonan was immersed in the process of smelting true gold. He completely forgot about the passage of time. Then, the hexa ear began to push information, vibrating his eardrums and sending a clear notification. A brand new day had begun. Right now it was 4:55 in the morning. According to Luonan's daily routine, it was already time for morning exercises from now on. We're done for. Luonan suddenly woke up with a start. He smacked his head with his notebook. How come it's already this late? Why don't I burn it a little longer? Luonan suppressed the thought just as it arose. It was already time for the morning class. Gym Master Xiao had always strictly warned against disrupting the rhythm of the class due to a moment of rashness. He couldn't push it back either. Recently, he had been working and resting strictly according to the plan. The association's security measures were also based on this. Sudden changes would cause trouble for many people. Needless to say, his plan to explore gear a second time came to a premature end. Luonan couldn't help but feel depressed. He could only suppress his impulses and adjust his mind. He used his morning meditation to guide and sort out his weed-like emotions. After stumbling for a few minutes, the powerful force of inertia pushed him back on the right track. Luonan had 40 minutes of morning classes and a morning run that was several times the time. Luonan returned at 7. As usual, his uncle had already prepared breakfast and was waiting for him to start eating. In the living room, his aunt was fiddling with her wristband with her head down. She had put on some makeup, but she didn't look lethargic because she hadn't slept for half a night. When he saw Luonan return, he used his chin to point at Luonan. Your uncle has something to do today, so he'll be leaving a bit earlier. Keep up with the pace. Luonan responded. He couldn't help but ponder in his mind. How could he make his aunt and uncle feel at ease? They might have to trouble Secretary He for this. He went upstairs to wash up. When he reached the staircase, Mo Peng came over with a yawn. When he saw him, he gave a sleepy yawn and went downstairs. Mo Peng just brushed past Luonan when he thought of something. He let out a sigh and grabbed Luonan's shoulder. But when her palm cut across, her fingertips didn't even touch Luonan's clothes. Instead, she nearly pinched Luonan's shoulder. Why are you running so fast? Mo Peng complained loudly. It's because you're too fat. Luonan turned his head. Right now, his physical skills were still mediocre. They were worlds apart from Shuelei and Cragburst, who had strengthened their fleshly bodies. But he had the support of the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. A little fatty like Mo Peng, who lacked training, really shouldn't even think about getting close to Luonan. Mo Peng used his thick finger to poke Luonan. Fine. You like the new and get tired of the old. You live off me while helping outsiders. You're just like this. It's a shame that I thought of you when I had good things to do. Luonan rolled his eyes at him and walked into the house. You're going too far. You hook up with that Leicester every day. Why don't you think about how long it's been since we brothers got together? Luonan had already entered the bedroom. He spoke casually. I'm at Acumen College. You're at 6th High. If you want to hook up with me, then skip class and come over. Mo Peng gave a thumbs up. Brother, you're a god in calculations. Luonan finally looked him straight in the eye. You. Skip class. Quiet. Quiet. Mo Peng jumped in fright. It must be known that his great mother was in the living room. He pushed Luonan inside. He originally wanted to talk about business, But when he saw the clean appearance of Luo Nan's bedroom, he could not help but ridicule. Perfectionist obsessive-compulsive disorder. Pure. Luo Nan was ready to kick this guy out. Mo Peng shrunk back. Let's talk business. Let's talk business. Have you received the compensation from Frost River Reality yet? Ha! It was last time in the city center. That mess happened. After that, they gave every customer who was present a member promotion compensation. Those who aren't members have membership. Those who were originally members have all been promoted by one level. In addition, they also gave luxurious gift bags and whatnot. Have you received it yet? From Luo Nan's perspective, Frost River Reality did not represent any beautiful memories. He entered the bathroom to adjust the water temperature. He casually responded, "So what? So what? After a member gets promoted, their expenses will drop by at least 20%, okay? And they also give out coupons. If you reach 1,000, you get 800. Adding them together, it's almost free. It's most suitable for group activities." Luo Nan sneered. "Go if you have the guts. If you go to the police station again, just don't look for me. The one in the city center. I'm definitely not in the mood. But near your school is the Cloud City Water Village. Didn't they open a branch recently? They claim to have the best equipment in the city. Brother, here's your chance to show off." Hey, what are you doing? Taking a shower. Clear the place." Luo Nan pushed Mo Peng outside. With his current strength, he could easily crush this sturdy brother of his. He directly pushed him out the door. Mo Peng still wanted to persuade him. "You do this every day. You run in the morning and you train. Even if you build a body of muscles, what's the use? You still need to go the social route. Only then will you have a chance to show off. Don't you understand? This is a get-together. I guarantee that I'll bring high-quality beauties from 6th High. You can't lose face to the Mo family and the Luo family. At the very least you have to be equal. Let's talk about it when you can actually hook up. I'm in a hurry. Listen to me, brother. You don't have any friends. Mother will definitely be a million times worried about you. You'll be a mama's baby for life. Oh, an aunt's baby. Hey, think about that house in Blue Bay. You wanted to just sit there and eat dust? Luo Nan always wanted to live alone. This wasn't a secret in his family. But the earthquake in September and the consecutive hospital visits last month had ruined his hopes. But Mo Peng didn't know that the main reason Luo Nan wished to be alone was to secretly make drugs. Right now, he no longer had the motivation to do so. Plus, he had offended more and more powers in succession. Even Luo Nan himself didn't know whether it was better to move out and attract firepower or to take care of his family nearby. Thinking too much about this sort of thing was really annoying. Luo Nan directly closed the door. He ignored Mo Peng's clamor outside and entered the bathroom to take a shower. Just as he stood under the shower head, the Hexa ear suddenly transmitted a message. The sender was Zhang Yingying. The message was very short. There were only 2 sentences. Be a bit more proactive. Don't let people look down on you. This message came out of nowhere. Luo Nan typed a question mark to reply, but the other party didn't reply. It seemed that she was still brooding over his words from yesterday. Luckily, there was a document attached to the message. Luo Nan took a hot shower as he browsed. This was an internal report Peony had given to the firm. It was undoubtedly related to the search for mutants. It could be seen that Peony had a more comprehensive grasp of the entire situation after a night of brewing. She had already proposed an extremely feasible plan of action. Luo Nan believed that he was unable to come up with this sort of plan. But this report was different from the one he had shared with the Cloud Space yesterday. This report was for the high-level members of the firm to read. Some of its contents were more sensitive. Chapter 355. At 7:15, Luo Nan hurriedly ate a few mouthfuls of rice. He took the pie and the cup of milk that his aunt had forced onto him and sat in his uncle's SUV. He displayed the extraordinary strength of a glutton. The car hadn't even driven out of the community when he finished eating the second half of his breakfast. He opened the car window and accurately threw the empty paper cup into the trash can on the roadside. His level of moving target practice was far beyond that of most people. Uncle Mo Haiheng shot a glance at him and closed the car window. You're not guessing, right? How could that be? I didn't train in martial arts for nothing. Luo Nan still clearly remembered the scene of the two elders racking their brains at the head of the bed in the wee hours of the morning. He felt ashamed and subconsciously jested. Look at my skill and accuracy. Uncle, take me to play with guns someday. I've forgotten where the doors of the shooting center face in the past few years. Sure. It's rare for you to ask. Mo Haiheng straightforwardly agreed. Then he seemed to ask casually, how have you been at school recently? I mean, have your social circles gotten a bit bigger? Luo Nan felt that his uncle's words had a deeper meaning. He responded with a few words, but he was worried that he would be too vague. It would be hard to gain the trust of others. He just so happened to have a matter on hand, so he changed his tone and spoke. He was also asking for guidance. Uncle, how do I cooperate with others? I recently had a club activity, so I formed a temporary team to do things together. I don't really understand how to do things properly. Mo Haiheng answered as he drove. Since it's a team, you need to understand your role in the team. You need to be the leader or the planner. You need to know your place as a technician or logistics. This answer was too perfunctory. Luo Nan wasn't very satisfied. This is from the standpoint of a team. That's right. Since it's a cooperation, of course we need to talk about the team. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. I want to work from a personal perspective. I want to know how to be respected in a team. Mo Haiheng looked at the road and didn't look at Luo Nan. He laughed and answered, the concept of respect is too vague. There's no universal standard. Everyone's role is different. Their expressions of respect will be different as well. A fellow who considers himself a leader may respect his subordinates as praise. But if the person he praises doesn't consider himself a subordinate, will he feel respected? That's true. So, if the environment is not formed, don't talk about the relationship in the environment. It can change at any time. For example, respect can be a reward, but it can also be a price. That temporary team of yours, we'll talk about it after it becomes a qualified team. Talking with an intellectual like his uncle was far too taxing on his brain cells. Luo Nan first shrank back. He half closed his eyes and looked again at Peony's evaluation in the internal report. Crow's professional level is unknown, and his initial judgment is that he's introverted. He's not good at communication and lacks initiative. It might be more appropriate to classify him as a support. There might be room for negotiation in future collaborations. This was his partner. The official operation hadn't even started yet, but she was already trying to seize power. What was even worse was that she was trying to bargain. Luo Nan admired Peony's eyesight and judgment, but this attitude inevitably made him feel uncomfortable. It also made him doubt Peony's structure. One had to know that this outsourcing was actually a compensation from Her Majesty the Martial Empress. No matter what, she would not discount it. Peony's words instead proved that her position in the firm was relatively ordinary. She hadn't felt the boss's pulse. Wait a minute. This isn't like Peony's style. Luo Nan picked at her words and suddenly realized something. The so-called bargaining might not be to cut off the amount of money for the outsourcing. Instead, it was to settle down on future solicitations. If this was the case, then it was quite brilliant. At the very least, she could understand part of Her Majesty the Martial Empress's intentions. Luo Nan still had to ask Yi Yueyin before he obtained an answer. Luo Nan felt mentally exhausted to be on the same team as this kind of person and to seize the upper hand. Mo Haiheng took the initiative to talk to him at this time. I have a general idea of what you're thinking. You feel that you need to have a goal or a paradigm when doing things. If you really don't know what to do, then learn from me. I feel that we are quite similar. See if we're suited to each other. Luo Nan immediately teared up. I was waiting for you to say this. I have a motto. Take a look. Mo Haiheng sent him a message. It was very short, only 8 words. Those who set up don't set up. Those who cross over don't do. Luo Nan was stunned. He had read the classics as a child, and he had recently followed Gym Master Xiao to learn classical martial arts. He had crammed in some relevant knowledge, and he recognized these words from the sacred text of Taoism. These 2 lines said that if one stands on tiptoe for the sake of looking into the distance, one will not be able to stand steadily. If one takes large strides for the sake of speed, one will not be able to walk very far. After these two lines, there was another line. Those who see themselves do not understand. Those who are self-righteous do not reveal themselves. Those who cut themselves down have no merit. Those who are self-conceited do not grow. And so on and so forth. The general meaning was that one cannot rely on frivolous and impetuous behavior. The deeper meaning was that one must retreat in order to advance. Well, this was indeed a style of doing things. It was quite compatible with his uncle's usual low-key words and actions. But the current situation was not like this. Mo Haiheng did not know that Luo Nan was entangled in his heart. He asked, "Do you understand?" "I understand."
Yes.
"Uncle, is there anything else?"
There is.
"For example, good deeds leave no trace. Good words leave no flaw."
I know.
Then there's also to know the male to guard the female, to be the stream of the world. To know the white to guard the black, to be the style of the world. To be the style of the world, to be eternally virtuous, to return to the limitless. Simplicity is a tool. The sage uses it as a commander. Therefore the great system cannot be cut. Luo Nan was scared. He simply memorized the entire passage in one breath. There were at least 80 similar sentences in the Book of Taoism, if not 100. But this was really not what he needed. Mo Haiheng laughed loudly.
Look.
You clearly know what you want to do. Why do you need to ask me? Luo Nan knew that he had been played. He was left speechless for a time. Actually, he wasn't interested in any kind of method. He didn't need to suppress others. If he had a choice, he would quietly stay in a corner and refine his external neuron. He would carefully experience this process and see what kind of result he would obtain in the end. However, he needed to do some things in order to obtain this peace. This entanglement was not something that could be explained to outsiders. Mo Haiheng used his finger to draw circles on his temple. Let me guess what you're thinking about. You want to do something, but you don't know if you can do it. So you want to find a successful paradigm like a set of formulas. You want to throw all sorts of parameters into it and then you'll succeed? Luo Nan made a sound. Just for reference. Mo Haiheng nodded. He then shook his head and sighed. Nan, how old are you this year? 16. What a good age. When I was 16 years old, I knocked up a classmate's belly. My old man kicked me down the stairs. My mouth was broken from the fall. Damn this gossip. Luo Nan's chin smashed against his chest. He didn't close his mouth for a long time. Mo Haiheng's gaze was fixed in front of him. He smiled gently, as if he was recalling a youth that would never return. But in the end, his gaze was still on Luo Nan's body. It seems that I haven't beaten you since you were 10 years old.
Right.
It seems so. A child in his teens. Second puberty, and rebellious phase. What a wonderful period. You actually passed by just like that? Uncle, are you very disappointed that you didn't get the chance to beat me? While Luo Nan was secretly ridiculing, new words poured into Luo Nan's ears. Tell me, should I praise you for being mature for your age? Or should I worry that there are problems with your physical and mental development? Luo Nan raised his head in surprise. He met Mo Haiheng's clear and cold gaze. He realized the serious attitude within. Humans have never been perfect creatures. The evolutionary history of the species is a history of trial and error. At most they have decent luck. So, society is very cruel, but it always leaves some room for trial and error. This is especially true for young people. Your grandfather's societal format chart only lists students. There is a group of people who pay tuition fees within it. His uncle's words had a scholarly seriousness to them. Luo Nan was a bit flustered. He didn't know what attitude he should use to respond. In the end, he could only respond with grunts. Mo Haiheng seemed to be interrogating him. Then Nan, you tell me. Why are you so stingy with your tuition fees? Are you prepared to press down on all the flaws and then lose everything in an even crueler stage? Luo Nan didn't even have the strength to respond with grunts. He felt that his uncle today was completely different from usual. Perhaps last night's matter made his uncle think a bit more. Was his uncle probing his attitude right now? Luo Nan really wanted to say that it was a misunderstanding. There wasn't some inexplicable organization looking for him. But if he thought about it a bit more, the nature of the situation he was facing was more or less the same. Wasn't this a problem caused by Her Majesty Empress Wu's group of people? His mind spun a few times, and he finally came up with words with great difficulty. So you're saying that I have to feel the stones and cross the river? You're saying that I have to fall down a few times? You guys are Uncle Wolf and Aunt Eagle, okay? Come on, I know that you don't like student activities, Uncle. Luo Nan did his best to disturb the atmosphere. He muttered, know the male and know the female. Know the white and know the black. Know the honor and know the disgrace. Suffering losses is a blessing. I know how to carry, okay? Mo Haiheng looked at him calmly. In the end, he washed away all of his solemn and cold aura. He returned to his normal state and smiled. I hope so. All right. You need to keep your mouth shut about the matter I just told you. You don't really want me to beat you up, right? Luo Nan blinked. If you don't say it, then I need to have the courage to pay the tuition fees.
Ouch.
Mo Haiheng really did slap Luo Nan's ear. Of course, he didn't use any strength. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to slap Luo Nan, who had the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. The interior of the car became lively. The autopilot system displayed its proper function. Luo Nan knew that some things had truly become different amidst the laughter. He needed to get used to this change. The car hadn't yet arrived at Acumen College. Far away in a certain park in the River Wu district, an enormous crow flapped its wings and took flight. It flew along the city's riverside greenery at a low altitude. The rubber band tied to the crow's leg vibrated slightly, transmitting real-time information to the crow. Chapter 356. In the driver's seat, Master Jean didn't change his gluttonous nature. He still held a bag of food in his hand, but this time he switched to a folk snack. It seemed to be donkey meat roast. 4 long and narrow pancakes were stacked together. The pancake and meat were thick. Master Jean just happened to take a bite when ink flew in. He bit through the oily red and yellow meat pancake, and the roast dregs and meat oil mixed into his beard. It was truly a mouthful. Luo Nan's senses were quite complicated when he saw this scene. He didn't know if he should be full or hungry. In contrast to Master Jean, Peony maintained absolute silence in the seat behind him. She held a book in her hands and was reading. It was a physical book that was rarely seen nowadays. It was a thin booklet. The printing was extremely exquisite, but it looked like it was frequently flipped through. The pages were curled up and looked old. Luo Nan sensed the book in passing. The words, Mystic Dermic Lotus Scripture, were written on the cover. He remembered that it was a Buddhist scripture. This was becoming more and more rare. Peony didn't have too much of a casual and charming attitude when she was reading. She sat upright, and her long and slender fingers lightly pinched the pages of the book. Ink crashed into the booklet with quite a bit of noise, but she didn't even raise her head. It wasn't arrogance. She was truly focused and serious. Luo Nan felt that the consciousness of the world was full of ridicule. First it was the Daedejing. Then it was the mystic Dermic scripture. What was going on today? Was someone going to bring a Bible over later? Ink didn't waste any words after entering the booklet. The civilian SUV started up and entered the high-speed magnetic rail. It followed the signs and sped toward the city. It was leaving the city. According to the plan, today's topic was still a meeting, but it was an on-the-spot meeting. Trigate Security arranged for the entire team to investigate the infiltration of the mutants on the spot. They also introduced more detailed information. Peony closed the book after the car started up. She even added a bookmark. She looked like she cherished the book. Perhaps this book had extraordinary significance to her? Luo Nan put himself in Peony's shoes and made a guess. However, Peony clearly wasn't prepared to discuss Buddhist scriptures or private matters with him. Her gaze shifted to Ink, and her eyes hooked into a charming arc. Crow, you nearly caused Mr. Ink to be late. The strange form of address and the corresponding person would make the heads of those unfamiliar with the team explode. Luo Nan thought of yesterday's small discussion regarding the form of address. That was the longest conversation they had yesterday. Perhaps Peony's preliminary judgment had largely originated from this? Luo Nan wasn't good at this sort of analysis, so he simply didn't care. He maintained his silence. Peony really did display quite the initiative. For the sake of increasing efficiency, we can change the team's mode of operation. For example, Mr. Ink can always be with me to avoid all kinds of unexpected and awkward situations. She didn't say what the awkward situations were, but Luo Nan could roughly imagine it. Peony asked again, "Does Mr. Ink need to recharge?"
Charge.
Luo Nan was stunned for a moment before he understood. Peony was inquiring about the mode of operation between him and Ink. He did not answer the question directly, but pretended a little. "If you don't mind, let it follow you for a few days. I'll be online anytime." Ink could also hear that the two were talking about it. Its pitch-black eyes looked at the slender figure in the back seat without blinking. "That's great." It seemed that Peony did not hear Luo Nan's tiny bit of malice. She just extended her hand and lightly patted Ink's grayish-white beak, teasing this giant among the crows. Then she said, "From the intelligence obtained yesterday, the target's main infiltration area is from the west of the River Wu district all the way to the outside of the main city district. The environment of the recycling stratum is even more complex. I plan to find a temporary residence in the River Wu district and conduct all-weather reconnaissance." Luo Nan immediately thought of his little nest in Blue Bay. Fine. Of course he wouldn't contribute it. He didn't have Peony's outstanding ability to analyze intelligence. If he could keep his mouth shut, he would do his best to keep his mouth shut. He would only speak after he arrived at the site to investigate. The civilian SUV shuttled through the early morning traffic. It took roughly half an hour to pass through the River Wu district and the adjacent Forest Wall district. This was tantamount to driving out of the main city of Xia City, heading toward the Trigate district further west. According to the normal route calculations, it would take an hour to penetrate the outskirts of the wilderness along the highway of the satellite city. It would be a cinch to reach the Trigate district several dozen kilometers away. However, the actual situation was much more complex. It was impossible for the mutants that had infiltrated Xia City to advance along the highway. On the contrary, according to their instincts to seek good fortune and avoid calamity, it was more reasonable to detour around the heavily guarded main road of traffic. Not long after leaving the main city district, the civilian SUV left the main road. Its four wheels touched the ground, and it began its bumpy journey. Luo Nan had never seen such a bad road in his life. It was as if they had just passed through an air raid. There were craters everywhere. Old Jean, who was in the driver's seat, gripped the steering wheel and switched from autopilot to manual mode. Then he yawned, making it hard for the passengers to not feel complicated. Old Jean spoke a few words in the beginning, but most of the time he kept his mouth shut. He just filled his stomach in different ways. He was neither hot nor cold. He had the habit of clocking out and getting off work. Old Jean said that he was just a driver. Luo Nan didn't have any other requirements for a driver. He was just curious as to what the government of Xia City did for a living. This was a proper living area. He had been to the recycling stratum before, and the road conditions were much better than here. The two sides of the road had quite the style of the recycling stratum. There were low buildings scattered here and there. Many of them were temporary buildings, but they looked quite new. He could vaguely see children shuttling back and forth on the side of the road, laughing and playing. Luo Nan recalled the relevant information and confirmed that he was at the edge of the Trigate district. The Trigate district used to be the garrison of Xia City, and it had just been moved not long ago. The military was stationed all year round, making this place very different from the modern city. Traces of relocation could be seen everywhere. Someone contacted her through her wristband. "Hello, Miss Peony. I am Axel Thursday of Trigate Security. Please report your position." This fellow called Axel Thursday was an intelligence officer in the Trigate security operation team. He was also responsible for liaison work. He was responsible for explaining the information during yesterday's meeting. He was quite an astute person. Peony simply shared her position, and Axel Thursday quickly responded, "I see you guys." A large container transport vehicle parked on the side of the road lit up its lights as soon as Axel Thursday finished speaking. The pitch-black body of the vehicle started up, indicating for Luo Nan and the others to follow. The civilian SUVs were quite suitable for the surrounding environment. As for the Trigate security military and police transport vehicle, it was indeed convenient to transport equipment and personnel, but it was quite eye-catching here. The vehicle stopped by the side of the road, attracting the gazes of many people. After it started up, There were even children driving skateboards, small cars, and the like. They tailed along the way. It was quite lively, but it was also quite comical. The group of people passed through the inhabited area under this strange atmosphere and drove to a relatively spacious area. Vehicles of all sizes stopped. There was a highland not too far to the right. A reservoir was built there, and the vegetation was dense. Though it was already late autumn, the deep green color was quite pleasing to the eye from a distance. The door of the container opened, and the personnel of Trigate Security jumped out with a clamor. Most of them had equipment in their hands, and they assembled it as soon as they landed. The interior of the enormous container was completely a modern command center. All sorts of instruments and equipment were perfectly arranged, and there were at least 30 people working inside. Intelligence Officer Axel Thursday walked out from the stream of people and walked toward the civilian SUV. Peony got out of the car as well. She extended a hand and shook his hand. Mr. Axel Thursday, Director Wu didn't come today? Axel Thursday had originally wanted to report this matter, but Peony beat him to it. His imposing manner unconsciously weakened, and the report turned into an explanation. Director Wu is participating in a last-minute meeting. He can't come, so he entrusted me to apologize to Miss Peony and Mr. Long 7. Long 7 is already here? Mr. Long 7 came a bit early. He said he was going to take a look at the reservoir.
Oh yeah.
Peony gazed into the distance, a faint smile on her face. She was dressed more or less the same as yesterday. She was dressed in a slim-fitting hunting attire, which suited her tall and slender figure the best. But this time, she didn't tie her hair into a ponytail. Her long hair was tied into a bun, and she used a wide-brimmed hat to hold it in place. The brim of the hat blocked her overly charming eyes, but the shadow that fell accentuated the contours of her face all the more. She was explosively handsome. Ink, who had just flown out of the car, had undoubtedly become a tool that served as a foil. The reservoir is the main point of our investigation. Intelligence Officer Axel Thursday had attended a lot of classes yesterday, so he unconsciously wanted to explain. Trigate District was originally a river. The largest freshwater river around Xia City passes through here and flows into the sea. It's just that during World War III, the military carried out a destructive project to prevent mutants from breaking through the defenses of the river. This project caused the river to change, and the water to dry up. Nowadays, it has already formed a low-lying area, but the underground water system is still extremely complex. We need to pay close attention to it. As he spoke, a 6 or 7-year-old brat suddenly moved in front of him. He opened his mouth and asked, "Are you guys here to attack the gangs?" "All right." The children of the inhabited area had tailed them all the way, and they had finally arrived. They might be young, but they could tell that this side was the most attractive. Plus, there was a huge crow. It was very eye-catching, so they naturally gathered over. Gangs? It seemed that Peony was more interested in this topic than the history of Trigate District. Unfortunately, the impetuous brat was dragged away by his companions in the blink of an eye. He was strictly ordered not to speak any more nonsense. After that, the group of brats were only interested in the beautiful woman, the large car and the crow. Not only did they forcefully crowd around, but they also wanted to take advantage of the situation. They climbed up the car, wanting to touch ink on the roof of the car. They forced the crow to fly into the air. Only then did they avoid being crippled by the claws of the devil. Very few children in the city are this wild. Peony's words seemed to have a deeper meaning, and Axel Thursday understood tacitly.
Yes.
They should be residents who migrated from the recycling stratum. It said that a portion of naturalized vagrants have mixed in as well. Their social relationships are very complicated. It's also because the military didn't do a good job of handing over the defense. This area suddenly became a no-man's land, and many people want to take advantage of the situation. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.